Hi guys, my name's Joe Barron and you're listening to the Scene World podcast.
Hello, this is Jörg and
this is Remute.
Welcome to the Scene World podcast. In a minute, I will be talking to Bram Hengewelt from RaceDepartment and René Butler from OverTake, the biggest portals about sim racing. But before we do that, we will talk about some news.
All right, let's see what's new.
Well, one news that I have is that the new Zelda Tears of Kingdom launched, and one GameStop store actually took that as a reason to say we quit, and so they closed the GameStop store on release day and wrote a note attached to the store saying they closed because of the horrendous work conditions.
Oh wow!
And yeah, so
I'm surprised that GameStop still exists actually, because they were on the verge of bankruptcy a couple of months ago, and they are still going somehow.
Yes,
but sometimes not, as we can see.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we also have them in Europe. I've been to one in Germany, I think. Well, was it very interesting? Not so much.
No.
But well, anyway, that closure only took 3 hours, because then they reopened with another staff, obviously from a different store. So
all right, that was short.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought that was noteworthy, because that's quite a thing, because the game was considered the biggest game of the year release.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, we will link to the Kotaku article so you can read more about it. Yeah. Well, apart from that, there is news about iFixit. We had iFixit as guests a couple of years ago as part of the right to repair movement, and they actually announced now a partnership with Logitech to offer OEM parts and official repair manuals for their mice and other Logitech products.
That's pretty nice. Sounds good.
Logitech is going towards easy repairability. Very
good. Yeah. I think more companies should do this, actually.
Yeah. I mean, especially nowadays, where you try to avoid e-waste, electronic waste, and well, especially by avoiding throwing stuff out, it's definitely good.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, apart from that, we also have news that Slipgate Ironworks actually started their new homepage. And apart from that, they also have, new material of their, past games and upcoming games. So that's pretty interesting, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
And Game Tree, which we had last year as guests, actually announced a new event, and that's called the Gaming Industry Night Party.
Ah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Where's the party going on?
The party is going on in the Expert Dojo at Santa Monica, USA, on the 10th of June between 6 and 10 p.m.
Let's all fly to Santa Monica.
Yeah. Right. Well, and some German news in between. The German magazine Return will no longer distribute through Newstrade, though they will be subscription only, because the costs to be on the Newstrade, where people could buy them in person, raise so much that it doesn't, it isn't worth it anymore to do that.
Yeah, I think it absolutely makes sense to be subscription only because the fan base is already quite huge, and it's the better model for the magazine because, as you said, the costs are immense, and it doesn't make sense anymore. And being also a writer for Return magazine, I absolutely get it because I know we have a great fan base, and I think it's a better model.
Yeah.
Definitely. Return will always go on, but this way I think it will be even better.
Well, I mean, I was surprised in the first place that they even were available at the newsstands. I mean,
yeah,
I did an interview with Frank Erstling, the chief of staff of the publishing house a few years ago, and he said that it was actually an achievement to be able to do that, and now it's not anymore. Well, I mean, that's also how I mean, if you look in the past, the 64er magazine also went subscription only before they slowly died, but I guess that's not the case here because those paper magazines that are niche are mostly actually subscription only. Only very few actually are on the newsstand, I would say. So.
Yeah, that's definitely the case, and I think the reason for this is because the conditions changed at the newsstands. Everything, the prices increased in an enormous way, and it absolutely doesn't make sense to lose money at the newsstand, because if you have a good fan base in the subscription model, then do it this way. It's better for all sides, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, we have a few other news, and that would be there is a new retro game, which is actually a shooter released, and that's called Project V90, and it's released for Android and iOS.
Oh, okay.
So, well, according to the preview videos, I would say it's kind of a shoot 'em up and a run and gun game, because some levels seem to be like a run and gun and the others seem to be like shoot 'em up. So it's a mix of various genres, I would say, and also one of the levels seems to be a jump and run. So it's not really particular in one genre. That's at least how I perceive it from what I saw from the footage.
Okay, sounds like a lot of variation. Interesting.
Exactly, yes. Yeah. But I'm not really an Android or iOS gamer. I'm not really fancy with touchscreen input. But you know, nowadays the new gamer generation is basically focused on touchscreen input.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just me being too old, I would say. Yeah. Well. And another news is, as we mentioned, Slipgate Ironworks before. Actually, Amazon Germany sent me a notification that the release of Tempest Rising is delayed to January 2024.
Oh, okay.
Which is sad because I was looking forward to have the game in my hands this year, but well, better take time and make it better, I guess.
Yeah, I think they need some time for polish, for all the stuff, and I think it's not too delayed. I think it sounds pretty okay. Just a few months more, and I hope it's a realistic date. Let's see.
At least that was Amazon told me. I didn't find any announcement on their new homepage about that actually.
We'll see.
But I guess it's probably mostly true because Amazon usually reflects what they are getting told by the publisher, which would be in this case THQ Nordic. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't send out an email to your customers, hey, the release is delayed until you really have to.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
So, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, and last news on my list would be there's a new game, and I was given a review code, and I will look into it a bit. In the new future, I think. It's called Catch the Fox by Shoulder of Giant Studios in Texas, USA. And it's about catching a fox.
Oh, so this is a nice goal for a game.
Yeah. Well, I was looking to get some contact info and learn more about this game, but I found no email address from Shoulder of Giants Studios whatsoever. So
okay,
that's seems to be a very small studio that doesn't really want to be reachable from the outside, it seems. Wow, now you were very close with your beard.
Because I needed to tell my little dog that he doesn't snort so loud.
Ooh, I didn't even hear it, so never mind.
Yeah, he's sometimes very loud, and I have to remind him that he has to be a little quiet.
Ooh. Well, speaking about being loud and proud, I've read you have a new C64 release.
Yes, definitely. It's coming out in July. It's called To the Bone. It's a cartridge for the C64, and it has 20 new songs of me, and yeah, real SID power, and also some digital audio this time. We managed to fit some digital audio into the cartridge in a pretty decent quality, and very proud of it.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Wonderful. Yeah. Well, that would be all from my side. Actually, cool. That's a whole bunch, a whole list.
Wow. Yeah, so don't forget partying in Santa Monica, and that's all for now.
Exactly, yes. Cool. And now let's start racing.
Right. All right.
Bye. So today we are having another interview and two guests this time, one with video and one without. And the guy with video would be René Butler from OverTake, and the one without video would be Bram. And now Dutch names. Hengeveld?
Yeah, that was almost
good.
Right.
That sounded
that's
nice
very
to
good.
me.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, the first thing when I was made aware of OverTake, thanks to a promotion clip on YouTube, actually, you know. Those you normally skip, you know. I actually had to look in your LinkedIn if you're actually a native English speaker, because you are doing this thing with your mouse, so you look a bit like Elvis Presley singing, and then you make a perfect Oxford English accent or something.
What?
No?
Oh, I mean, I can tell you, yes, something is wrong with the way I speak, as I only do, like, you know, in German, we do a lot of SCH.
Yeah.
A lot of sh, right? And I only do that on one side of the mouth, which is why you will see me in any, like, show or whatsoever with headset, always trying to have the headset on the other side. Because if I have it here, it sounds awful, right? So I always need to have it on the other side, so people don't realize that I'm actually not intelligent enough to figure out how to do that that noise on both sides of my mouth. So I can only do it on one side.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
that's
it is
the
like
reason.
that.
Yeah. And it's a butler, right? Not
That's
butler.
correct. Yeah, Butler's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, don't pronounce it English because it probably isn't, you know?
No, it's like so many people do. By now, I really don't care anymore. It's like, you know what? Whatever it might be. Even the
I mean-
Germans do it wrong then. As soon as they speak English in a show, they say it wrong. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually the same problem with my own name. Like, wait a second, it's Jörg. And, you know, most English-speaking people pronounce it wrong, like jerk or George or something. So totally understand that. Or something like that, yes. Anyway, so we both have you because actually RaceDepartment, where Pram is from, and OverTake actually joined forces last month. And interestingly, originally I only planned to interview OverTake, and then Renee was like, we have a big announcement coming up. I can't tell you what it is, but we might have to expand the scope of the interview. So, and this is why we have now
two for the price of one.
Yeah. Exactly. That's actually a first in 9 years that we get more guests than we originally invited. So, so of course that will be a big question. If I'm not mistaken, it's hard to get the numbers, but RaceDepartment is from 2006, if I'm not mistaken, and OverTake is from the year. Whoa, did I actually write it down? 2021.
Should be, yes.
Yeah.
The problem is, I'm not entirely sure. That's why I waited for you to say it now. If it was 2020 or 2021, you know, the pandemic years are kind of a bit like a huge blur for everyone.
Yeah.
I think 21 is correct. No, it could.
Actually,
it could be 2020.
Actually,
I think it's 20.
Actually, I wrote down 2020.
Yeah.
I actually went by when you opened your YouTube channel and the Twitter and so on, and that actually says founded in 2020.
Yeah, that makes more sense. Like, because I was waiting through. It's like, wait, there was definitely one more Christmas.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I also found you both have similar histories. You both started out working in the game industry, right?
A little bit.
A little bit, at least. Yeah.
A little bit. Actually, I started in teaching. I'm a geography teacher by profession. At least I used to be until 2008, when I gave up my job to work indeed in the game industry. Not as a developer, but as an event manager. But we'll get to that later.
Well, you see, there's the overlap, Jörg, that you probably didn't know. I also studied to become a teacher, history and religion. So basically the same as Pram. That's what we figured out when we met each other. It's like, oh, look at that. So even the past is basically the same. So yeah, there are similarities. And obviously my start in gaming, I think my first TV show about gaming was 2004. For, if you remember, ESL TV and NBC Giga. They were big in Germany back in the days. So I did some stuff there. And then I returned full-time to gaming as a full-time job in 2015.
Wonderful. Yeah, now the thing is, I discovered when I talked to you first, our common person, Renee, in the industry is actually Joe Barron.
Oh, Joe Barron, Slightly Mad Studios.
Exactly, because we I don't know if it was the last interview, but we did an interview about Project Cars 3, and shortly afterwards, EA announced that they took over. Yeah, so I was like, guys, this might be the last interview about Project Cars because I'm pretty sure EA will axe the series.
But Joe is a great guy. Like I worked with him together on the Project Cars World Series on Project Cars 1. And then I helped them a bit with the director on broadcasting mode for Project Cars 2 because we ran their esports program. Back then I was still working at ESL as publisher relationship manager. But if I could sign someone right now from the team, I would probably sign Joe. He's great, super nice person to have around, super passionate, dedicated to gaming, which is why I'm devastated kind of that team, that they took away their own franchise I mean, even we can argue for hours now if Project Cars 3 really had to be what it was, right? That we can do that for another time. But in general, what they built, Project Cars 1 and 2, were great titles, right? And no matter if you want to see them as hardcore title or simcade, we need all the titles in the ecosystem to get people interested, right? And everyone likes different stuff. And I think they achieved some really good stuff, especially Life Track 3.0 back in the days. Amazing. Then that you could have from Nordschleife in the snow up until Rallycross with the Honda Civic coupe that they had from GRC series.
Or kart racing.
Yeah,
kart
all
racing.
of it was there, and it looked amazing. And I have to say, back then, I really liked it because from real racing, as you know, I have a background in real racing. It was always, you have to adapt every single lap on a track like Nordschleife because it's always different. And sim racing in the early days, like Live for Speed and all that, was always whoever is the best hot lapper. If he has in an open road, he will probably be the winner, right? Because nothing will ever change. And Project Cars showed us with Life Track 3.0 with how the puddles vanished or how they built up and stuff. You had to adjust every single lap, and I absolutely love that.
Also one of my favorite series, yeah. And what I really liked is you only bought one game and you had it all, and you didn't have to buy, at least for the first, you didn't have to buy DLCs. You really got all kinds of
wasn't there a Japanese car pack for the first one as well that you get when you were actually investing into the game? Wasn't there? Now I look that up.
I don't really remember, but I was one of those people actually. Yeah.
I also invested into it. Was okay. All right, it's one DLC. Let's see if something comes up.
But what also would interest me is, do you guys share the reasoning of EA for axing the series, which said changing to Project Cars 3 actually killed the interest in the series, or do you disagree with that reasoning? Perhaps let's start with Pram first.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I have not played Project Cars 3 at all.
Oh, wrong question.
Well, I can't play everything, right? So no, not tried it.
Well, then René, it's up to you.
Did it kill the series? I think it was more the problem, a similar problem that EA already faces with Need for Speed, is the identity, right? What do you want to be? We all know in terms of marketing, 1 and 2 were sold as the answer to sim racing. And we're also not going to that. Marketing is always marketing, right? Everyone will tell you that they have a great game, which is fair. I mean, who wants to go out there and tell people they have a shit game, right? Doesn't make sense. But 1 and 2, we're going in the direction of either simcade or really hardcore simcade into sim racing, right? I also, I don't want to argue the same about F1 because let's be real, Project Cars probably calculated way more factors for driving than some of our hardcore sim racing titles, right? True, I mean, they had full weather, they had tires and everything. iRacing doesn't have weather, right? Not right now. We hope very, very soon. But so I always saw them as a simulated title. And then seeing 3 coming around, scratching the pit stops, get it. I'm a huge sprint racing fan. But really taking it out to take it away from the community, I think that was the wrong move. Making it a bit more accessible, okay. But I think the big clash was the community that is vocal and maybe a minority, because we know that there's way more casual players by now than hardcore. But the vocal community wanted Project Cars 3 to be the successor to Project Cars 2. And what we got was more the step towards Forza Motorsport, Gran Turismo, right? While still being under the same name. So could the game maybe have been successful under a different name? That's an option. It wasn't in general. It wasn't a bad racing game. It was just everyone expected something else, and seeing that people were already unhappy that Project Cars 2 wasn't iRacing, wasn't R-Factor, whatever. It built up on that hate kind of. And I think it just hit the game at a very bad timing. I understand EA, though, in terms of their overall portfolio, keeping in mind that in the moment they bought it, they had Grid, and they just brought it back. They had Project Cars 3. They have the Dirt series. So, of course, that's different games. But at least Grid and Project Cars 3 had a clear overlap. Project Cars 2 and Grid don't, but 3 definitely. So for them, it was just figuring out what to do. And maybe they saw the damage of the brand being way bigger. So if they cut it, they could still build another game and just name it differently, right? It's just they probably are not interested right now in touching the Project Cars name and brand due to the issues.
But the thing is, the Need for Speed brand always take a dip anyway. I don't know, guys, if you have been at Gamescom in 2017. Have you been at Gamescom 2017? Pram, you too?
Nope.
You didn't. Okay.
No.
Well, so the situation was for us, the press, we have been invited to go to the EA booth, and nobody was interested in Need for Speed Payback. All the press was focusing on FIFA alone, and we from Scene World, we wanted Need for Speed because I'm deep into racing. So and there was one PR person from EA, when they saw we were the only guys standing at the Need for Speed Payback booth area, you know, he was like, hey, do you want exclusive interview? Do you want exclusive presentation? We can give you everything, you know. And like totally, I don't know. And I really liked the game, and it was actually the first time that EA gave us more press coverage and interviews than we actually booked for, because they were so desperate of media coverage.
Which is sad, right? I mean, when we talk about Need for Speed, we're talking about one of the biggest franchises in the world when it comes to cars. And yeah. I have a soft spot for it because my competitive racing started on Need for Speed. So I still claim very highly and brag about 120 days of first place at ESL ladder for 1v1 Need for Speed Underground. That's where I started. I started with the very first Need for Speed, but I started competitively with Underground 1. It's just the world moved on, right? And right now it's really hard to tell. It's like, yes, we all say we want Underground 2 back kind of as a remaster and all that. But then on the other hand, wasn't that Need for Speed 2015? Right? It's like, I played it back and forth. Because I have it here, original, Underground 1, Underground 2, I still have the boxes and stuff. So I played it and was like, maybe we're just not in the same world anymore. Would really Need for Speed Underground still work nowadays? Probably not. Right? But we remember them being great games. I mean, I spent so many hours in it, but
awful. I mean, awesome. Not awful. Awesome. Yeah, it was. It was awesome indeed. Yeah. But don't let us get too sidetracked. Well, I mean, hey, 3 racing experts. Of course, we are going to nerd out. We are going to nerd out about the topic, right? But the thing is, now the question is, Pram, for you, how did you get actually into creating a new community for racing in 2006? Wasn't there enough already, or?
There was enough indeed. I think it goes back a little bit further when I started racing, which for me was in '87. That's when I started my first racing career, basically. At the age of 12, so that also shows my really old age. So I'm really a senior in this.
This is so good. Normally I'm the old guy. This is so good. It's like,
yeah, no, I'm the old guy. So in '87, I picked up a game for my MSX2 computer, home computer, a game called F1 Spirit from the legendary studios Konami in Japan, I think they were. That was the game that got me hooked into virtual motorsports. And from that moment onwards, I have played only racing games and racing sims, nothing else. So I'm not even a gamer. So I don't consider myself a gamer. I am a lost talent, a Ayrton Senna without a budget.
Okay.
Because of the
what a claim.
Yeah. So because of the lack of budget, I've always been in the virtual space. It's cheap, it's safe, free of risks, and I think after I've played basically throughout high school with friends. So we had offline leaderboards at the back of the classroom, basically, where we did GP1, GP2, all the legendary first racing sims, basically. Lost touch with sim racing entirely during college. Disconnected, I think, for a year or 4. Busy doing other things, drinking beer, getting a study degree, etc. And it returned when I picked up a laptop for work and I purchased a really cool Medion laptop. And you German guys know what Medion is, right?
Yeah.
Of course,
So,
yeah.
so it's the home brand of the Aldi supermarket, and they sold a super complete, compact laptop with everything pre-installed. And the cool thing is, there was a nice box outside where you could pick 2 games with your purchase. And I picked up DTM Race Driver from Codemasters, obviously. Went home, started playing, and I thought, wow, how I missed this, right? So they had a gap of 4 years to fill, and yeah, totally got me hooked. So I played, I think, for days in a row. Yeah, and the sparkle was back. It was actually never left, but I didn't know. And yeah, that was the pure addiction level, basically. So that's basically how I got back into the genre. Raced online for the first time, because that was basically my first encounter with online sim racing after all these years of doing it offline. Met a few cool people, and I think his name is his nickname at the time was Honk, a German truck driver who was basically gaming from his truck when he was in parking places and stuff. And we did it online. And the 2 of us started a little racing team called RTS, which was an abbreviation for Racing Till Sleep. Cool.
Okay.
And he got the great idea by basically telling me, hey, you know what you should do? Because I'm in the truck all day. You should create a forum so we can exchange information and have a really nice place where we can discuss our hobby. I said, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, why not? So did a little bit of research, purchased, it was not even a purchase. It was a free forum software that we used online. And that's where the first forum started, basically, with 2 members, him and me. And 17 years later, we're with 3 million. So that's the shortcut, right? So how you go from 2 to 3.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting that you mention it, because in your press release, it seems you focus on the community and the forums at RaceDepartment in your press release, and OverTake seems to focus on content like the Nitro show and other shows. So that is where you complement each other. One has the community and the other has the video production stuff, kind of, which RaceDepartment does too. And you also have a homepage and stuff besides the forums, but it's not the main point of the page. So that is where you complement each other.
Yeah,
this
correct.
way, I guess. Yeah. Now the question remains to René. Why did it happen in 2020 with OverTake? Did you guys have too much times on your hand with the pandemic and stuff?
I mean, I have to admit, just to make it clear, I wasn't around. I heard about the product, but I wasn't around when it started, because in 2020 I was still with Studio 397 working on R Factor 2. I would just say I wasn't responsible for business decisions.
Okay. For the better or the worse, yeah.
I was business manager at Studio 397, so I did stuff like licensing, marketing, for R Factor 2 mainly. And obviously we sold to Motorsport Games, which then back in the days for me was the decision to then leave the studio, do something else. So I wasn't interested doing the work there. Why for OverTake in general? If you look at the idea and also at the slogan, for example, that started it all, which was "Time for New Heroes," right? It was about, we have the esports scene, which, let's be real, for many years, if you look at the core, is very professional, right? We have great drivers, we have amazing championships. No matter if it's now like the one that we now label esports or the ones that we know from the community, like VEC, for example, right? The one that now I forgot his name. Was my colleague before? Bram knows. What was his name? Jimmy. No, Jimmy. The Studio 397 guy that does VEC.
Yeah. Jimmy Ellison.
Jimmy Ellison, there we go.
Yeah.
I was looking for his last name. Yeah. So Jimmy Ellison has a great endurance league, right? And they're all very professional. There's 1,000 leagues that have their own licensing system and stuff. but there's not a lot of coverage for that. There's a stream nowadays for everything because it became so easy to stream. And I still come from the time when I started my first sim racing stream as a commentator. It was radio. There was no picture whatsoever on Gamer FM actually. And nowadays it's so easy. So we have all of this content, but let's be real and without being mean, most people don't watch it. You have a ton of leagues that broadcast basically for 5 to 8 people, which is sad because they put it on a great league. So the idea behind OverTake was, hey, on one side we have this very professional esports, ranging from community professionals to the esports part, and then we have this entire world nowadays of virtual racing and everyone coming together. This needs to be pushed more. It needs to be in the faces of people, right? Like we need to bring the content out there. We need to have, like, on one side we want to cover the entire world of competitive racing, but we also know that it's a huge world, and we know that from Assetto Corsa, like people that only do pictures, videos, liveries, right? And bring the entertainment side, because I personally, I think, and coming from similar years than Bram, not that old, but very old. I started with Live for Speed with my competitive racing and sim racing. Sometimes I had the feeling we took ourselves a bit too serious, right? Which killed the opportunity to have entertainment content that brings new people into our scene, because it's not that you look super professional how you get others interested in your hobby. It should look fun and engaging and entertaining, right? That's how we get people to come into. And that was the idea behind OverTake. It's like, okay, on one side we want to show how cool this scene is and how the heroes are doing there, and on the other hand we want to show, hey, it's more than looking at Excel tables and graphs and being super nerdy and being gatekeeping of our favorite hobby, and instead show the entertainment and fun side, which a lot of the YouTubers nowadays do. Like Gamer Muscle is one of the best to say there. Right.
Oh, you changed.
That's
to
way
scene.
better. That is way better. Great. So it's just like that's the main idea of it. Hey, we have this great hobby. We all love it. So how do we make sure that the work, not of us, but also of community members in their league, gets appreciated more, seen more by others, which is why we work closely with the community on that. And how do we make it more easier to get into, especially into sim racing? Because nowadays, if I see people going on a Facebook group or whatever, or Discord, and writing something like, hey, I just picked up F1 2020, and then 200 people telling them that was the wrong title, you should have this, buy this and that. That's sometimes I think that's actually bad how we do it, because that's not encouraging, right? That's not the welcome people should have. And that's kind of what we want to do with OverTake. We want to make it easier for everyone to get into our favorite hobby, to understand it, to grow in it, find your place. What do you want to do? Are you a hardcore sim racer? Do you want to have Simcade? Do you want to fool around with dinosaurs and Assetto Corsa? Fine, right? It's all part of our hobby. Yeah. And OverTake is the place for that. So that's the main idea behind it. Why during the pandemic? I know that the idea already existed for longer than that. I think 2 years. But it obviously takes time until you actually establish the team, get enough money together to do it, right? It's not as simple anymore as when Bram started the forum to build something new nowadays. So that took a while, and then pandemic happened, and that's where OverTake started.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. It's the first time a YouTube advertisement actually interested me, and so when I looked it up, I was like, oh wow, that's interesting. And then I saw like, oh, it's HQ'd in Berlin, Germany. Oh my god, you know. And then we're like, oh, this is really nice content. And then when you told me about the announcement and with RaceDepartment, I was like, wow, this got so much bigger now. Correct me, Pram, but I think you are the biggest community out there in virtual racing, right?
Yeah, in terms of members and traffic, yeah, we certainly are. Yeah.
Wow. So is it like David and Goliath, the the small and the big partner? I mean, it's quite some years difference between RaceDepartment 2006 and OverTake 2020.
Yeah, and I think that is actually the interesting part, is that people always perceive us as Goliath, as the big mammoth community with probably a really large HQ with a lot of people working for it. While in fact, it's me and a few volunteers. So the team that we're running RaceDepartment is super small, tiny. which often is a big benefit because we can move really fast, we can make quick decisions, we can change course if needed pretty quickly. On the other hand, it's a pretty limiting factor to move forward. So in the last 16 years, I think I've created version 1.0. And for me to reach version 2.0, I needed help. So a partner with a larger team, a more professional organization, and most importantly, a joint vision. So to create OverTake 2.0 or RaceDepartment 2.0, we needed to find the right partner. And I've been speaking to a lot of them in recent years. And quite frankly, in the pandemic and the period afterwards, there were also a few, well, let's say positively, not such good actors to speak with. And I think with OverTake, we've now found the right partner to move forward and create this, yes, very large community, but with really motivated professional team. And that is what I've been missing all these years is to have a joint team to work towards a common goal. Volunteers is fantastic. It's the best there is, but sometimes you need full-time professionals to move things forward.
And if I'm not mistaken, this is like the first time the two of you, RaceDepartment and OverTake, are interviewed together as a unity, right?
I think so. Yeah.
It is.
Wow.
I mean, I will blame him right after for still having the RaceDepartment logo as his Skype avatar.
Yeah, but here's the interesting thing. Here's the interesting thing where the press announcement is a bit confusing, because you say you will work in tandem, expanding and complementing each other's content, but still remain the unique community both platforms are loved for. How is that not conflicting with each other? Being tandem and together and still separated at the same time? That's sounding a bit like conflict of interest at some point.
If you explain it that way, it might be. I think it's pretty simple. I think on this tandem, you have a front runner with a large community, with a lot of eyes, with a lot of members, and a really solid foundation when it comes to community, which is our strongest point. With obviously, we have a large resource for modding items as well, so people can create user-generated content, mods, cars, tracks, whatever favorite items they create for their games. But I need to admit that despite the fact that RaceDepartment did fantastic in terms of traffic and users, we're not really the best in social media. We're not really good actually in creating video content. We have a team of hardworking volunteers that produce news, but these people have real life jobs. Some of them are in college, they are not always around, and I can't be everywhere at the same time. So if you look at the other partner on the tandem, it's OverTake, really strong in content, both written, both in video, and especially in social media. And so if you put the two actors side to side, there's massive overlap. Right? There's areas where we perfectly fit in. So in this announcement, yes, nothing will be taken away. So all the elements from RaceDepartment will remain. All the elements of OverTake will remain because we're complementary. We're not taking stuff away, we're adding stuff. So in that sense, the tandem has two actors that are very complementary.
It's a bit like, obviously we had the discussion also with the RaceDepartment community after the announcement, right? There was a forum where everyone could just ask questions, and we tried our best to answer everything. And obviously we discussed it a ton, like Bram and me probably had several hours by now, of course.
Okay.
To always see like what is there, but there is really no there's no single part where we actually would need to decide if we go one way or another. Because as Bram already said, the forum is the heart of RaceDepartment, which we always thought about. Because the problem is forum the future? Looking at what's happened currently, probably not anymore. Nowadays, people are on Discord or whatever, right? But we all like the idea of having a forum and having all that knowledge available. So we always wanted one, but we thought like, oh, we can't build one anymore. And to be honest, why would we want people out of RaceDepartment? They have a perfect place for them, right? Yep. So coming together means like there was no forum on our side, so we don't have to decide. Obviously, it's the RaceDepartment forum, right? That we take. And then on the video side, as Bram already said, they weren't really big on doing videos, right? So the content production side is basically what we bring to the table to create like a fuller lineup basically of offerings for everyone. And I think there's absolutely nothing where it's really about like, oh yeah, you either do the RaceDepartment way or you do the OverTake way, just because we never did the same anyway. Like we wanted to do the same as in helping the community and build a place for sim racers to be around and lovers of virtual racing that they can enjoy the hobby more. That is the same target, but we did it in completely different ways. And that's why this partnership can work very well. And I think even from our first weeks after the announcement, obviously this went on for way longer than the announcement, obviously getting all of that underway. But we have tons of ideas. We have tons of things where we all of a sudden are like, hey, now that we are one, it's so much easier for us to do this. We could do cooler stuff for the community. We could do bigger stuff, right? Just because we now came together and actually have all of this available to us. As Bram already said, obviously our teams are different, right? Ours is a bit bigger. We have full-time people working on OverTake, which will now be the same, right? So we basically share teams as it will become one platform in the end, not right now, that will take time. And we obviously want to make it right. And I think we demonstrated that right from the get-go, saying, hey, we know that Bram came to us and said like, hey, this is the top 5 priority list of our community, what they currently dislike, right? So the servers are too slow and stuff like that. So we're like, all right, before we do anything else, let's fix that, right? Because that's something that we can attack, basically, make better for the community so they understand we're not here to take away the forum and do whatever, rip it apart. But instead, we just want to build RaceDepartment further. It might then be named OverTake in the future, right? That's the end goal. But that doesn't mean that anyone loses anything. And I think that is the big reason why Bram is still with us, because it is the same vision. It's just now we have more opportunities.
Okay. Well, just wanted to know how to understand the press release.
It's press releases. They're always complicated.
Yeah, right. Now the question is, I found conflicting info. Where is RaceDepartment actually headquartered? Is it in the United Kingdom or is it in the Netherlands? Because I found conflicting info on different pages.
Oh. Well, tell me,
curious.
What info did you find?
I mean, I think on Twitter it says United Kingdom, but you are located in the Netherlands, and
So me, the business, but also all of our servers are all located in the Netherlands.
In the Netherlands. Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
It says global on Twitter, though. I just checked that.
But then perhaps it was some other place. But I saw United Kingdom at some place. I think I remember that when I researched.
But we have people working for us that are from the UK, obviously. So they might have adjusted that.
But now that René, you said you haven't been with OverTake since the start, we totally skipped how you got involved in the industry, because that is how Bram explained 2 questions in one answer.
He's good at that.
Hey.
Yeah, so we skipped your history, kind of.
How I started. So I come from a household where my dad was a huge F1 fan. See Michael Schumacher, right? That's easy to see. And he was a coder, so programming and all that stuff. So I grew up around PCs.
Nerd household. Oh my god.
Yeah, which means, but there's a downside to that. As a kid, I never had a console because my dad was always like, "That's the devil. We don't do such things." PC is where it's at. Basically, there was the start of PC the Master Race. It started in my household, so I could never have a Game Boy or a PlayStation or whatsoever. Never had that until I turned 18, I think.
Wow.
And
it's my money. I'm old enough.
Exactly.
I'm adult. I can make my own decisions.
So I started with PC, and then since my dad was very interested in Formula and technology, not a huge gamer, just slightly bit. I obviously grew up with Microprose Grand Prix, right? So I played all the 4 titles of Jolf, right? So all of them.
The famous coder.
And they were amazing. Let's be real. It's still, I think, to date, still the only Formula One game where you see a marshal pushing your car away and putting it on a towing truck. That was never seen again, right? And it is definitely in Grand Prix. So I started with that, then did the Ubisoft F1 games. No one remembers them anymore, but before EA got the license, there were 2 to 3 games by Ubisoft, 1 with a license and 2 without Formula license. They have been incredible. Absolutely loved them. And then Need for Speed came out, the first one. And we had a friend who worked at Telecom. So he was like, you know what? I can set this up for us that we can do playing via phone on the very first Need for Speed. That was my first online racing experience, kind of, if you can call that online. Wow. And then we did, like evenings where friends were around and everyone gathered on one PC and we did hot lapping on Need for Speed. Steering wheel, like the very small Cytec steering wheels.
That was 1995. You don't look that old, to be honest.
I'm 35, so I'm a bit older. So you see that here, basically.
Ooh.
And so I did that. Absolutely loved it. Went into karting a bit, but I'm coming from a non-motorsport family in terms of connections, so never had a chance to do anything besides a few kart races. So the same as Bram, sim racing was the way forward for me to do something. And then when I was at university to become a teacher, I had the opportunity to actually start working at Motorvision, which is a German car magazine. Back in the days, it was a big TV channel and this print magazine and everything. And I did sports car testing for them. So I did like track driving and all testing sports, supercars, stuff like that. That was really, really cool. Still doing sim racing at the side. And then I returned and got a deal with ESL because they picked up WRC 5 back then, the first ever esports WRC season. And the community management for WRC 5 and everything from Big Ben Nacon was with ESL at that point. So they hired me to basically oversee the thing. I started as a community manager for Germany and then went my way up. And from there on, I basically had my hands on, I would say, nearly everything that is out there. So I worked on concepts for F1 esports. I was part of the Gran Turismo World Tour, Project Cars Major Series. Forza Racing Championship was my own project as well. Season 1, 2, and 3.5 kind of, because that went to a different provider, which of course wasn't hardcore sim racing. I was still, like, privately I was doing R Factor because I did a lot of R Factor endurance racing back in the days. Live for Speed, that was my main title. But in terms of esports, it was obviously Forza, Gran Turismo, Project Cars that were a lot bigger. So I worked on them. And with that, I just kind of returned to sim racing. And since then, I'm stuck there, which is good because I absolutely love it. So since 2015, I don't do anything else, kind of. I did a lot of commentary and casting for main esports games. So Rainbow Six Pro League, Clash of Clans 1 series, stuff like that. But I always worked on products that were sim racing. And then in 2018, I switched over because I saw the esports side and I wanted to see the side of developer and publisher. So I signed with Studio 397. Working on R Factor 2, super happy obviously then afterwards that we got the license for Nordschleife and all the, it was the hype years kind of, right, where we had like Sebring all of a sudden, Nordschleife, new content, GT3s and all that. Yeah, and that's it. And then from there on, OverTake was the next step kind of.
So you already answered my next question. That was, you also play other games sometimes, not only racing games.
Yeah, I'm the opposite to Bram. I have to balance out sim racing because I'm very competitive. And if I do sim racing, I did the Sebring 12 hours, for example, I pay a price for that basically because I really want to, and I really want to be good. And then to level that out, I play basically everything from Star Wars games to strategy, FPS, MOBA, Pokemon Unite, Pokemon card game. Wow. Online as well. So yeah, I'm a gaming head. I love all kind of games because I think we can always, especially in sim racing nowadays, we can learn from all the gamifications and mechanic these games have. Because let's be real here, for the last 15 to 20 years, sim racing main menus always look the same. Championship, hot lap, free practice, online, exit. There's option button, and then there's exit, right? So they all look the same. And I think it's about time. We don't have to go crazy as Forza Horizon, but I think it's about time to bring gamification to sim racing to just make it more enjoyable throughout the whole. Not every one of us is a pro sim racer that just wants to spend his day analyzing Motec. We all love racing. We all have a passion for that, but that doesn't mean that we have to spend 24/7 just on Motec for one lap. So
that you mentioned all racing games menu look the same. I think the most prominent example probably is the NASCAR racing series. It's like, is that the same game, or are the graphics actually better? Or
well, that's the same for any game. Look at AC compared, look at Microprose Grand Prix and compare that to AC. It is basically the same game. Like, obviously, there's a lot changed. Physics got a long way and all that stuff. But in terms of gamification, actually, what you can experience as a player, as a driver, is basically the same. And I think that's what the next step. And that's why I enjoy even trying out games that I'm not really interested in, because there's so many where I see like, man, the devs had a great idea here. That was a good idea to do that, or that's a smart way of introducing it to a player. And I think we just have to look outside of only sim racing. Like, I love sim racing, do it a ton, but it's good to see other things and see like, hey, maybe there's something that we can snack up for us and make sim racing better.
I'm actually looking forward personally to the upcoming indie racing game.
Oh, the one 2024, you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Since it was just delayed by another year.
That's true.
Which is sad.
That's true. Yeah,
but I have to say, I was more personally, because I love touring cars, I was looking for a BTCC game. But I also have to say, do I think BTCC is big enough for its own game right now to really be like, like a success on the market? I don't think so. Which would be sad, because I don't want them to do a game and they're not being successful, because that always means we lose a game, right? We don't want to lose franchises. I don't want to lose Project Cars either. But BTCC, I just don't know if it's big enough yet for its own title, but I would love to see it.
Yeah, I guess the reason I'm looking forward to the IndyCar game is probably because of my history. I used to be a DOS gamer, and I really liked IndyCar 2 from 1997.
Papyrus, yeah.
And Papyrus, and I mastered it that I could race the course the wrong way, and I totally loved it. And if I remember correctly, it had the same engine as NASCAR Racing 95 2 years earlier. So it was basically a very similar game with the same engine, but a bit more track details and different tracks, obviously.
Well, wait, they had a setup screen that let you actually see the fuel tank and how you actually add fuel to the tank.
Okay,
great feature. I want that back.
True.
I'm gonna make you really happy, York, and send you a link later on where you can actually play IndyCar 2 online on your current PC right now.
Wow, that would be amazing.
We will never see him again now. It's like end of the podcast series.
No,
like, great.
yeah.
IndyCar.
Yeah, I mean, it's super interesting because I'm the racing freak of the of our staff, so I'm totally happy that we make this interview now, because finally I can nerd out about something. And I just realized that different genres and game series actually are dying out. I mean, just 2 days ago on Sunday we released an episode with Frank Lipacki, who worked on Command and Conquer, and many people in their 30s, well, 30 or in their 20s, so like 5 years younger than you, René, they're like, what is Command and Conquer? Who is Frank Lipacki? Never heard of both. And
kind of sad, actually.
How can you not know it? It's like, well, that's
the RTS genre basically disappeared. Yes, it's like it was a huge hype. It's gone, but we also know that it happened to other genres as well.
And I think the same will happen with Project Cars series in a few years. Everybody will be like, what was Project Cars again, So
nowadays there's YouTube, although the Westwood Story and entire Command and Conquer is also on YouTube.
And I mean, they had the remaster 3 years ago. So you would think that the remaster helps pushing the genre again, but it somehow didn't in a certain age group.
I think it has to do with the game being, I always call it passive gaming, which is obviously wrong because you're very active in Command & Conquer. But for example, look at the difference between League of Legends or Dota and Warcraft, because obviously Dota came from Warcraft, right? And Warcraft is a game where you have a lot of units, so you're not really attached to that one unit, while Dota, you're attached to that one unit, right? And I think in general, gaming went towards more of that, since we can now do so much, like simulate so many things, have so many features, there's a bigger focus on actually one single unit, person, car, whatever it might be, compared to back in the days where it was like, okay, we can't do 3D full environment of Command & Conquer. I mean, they tried with CNC Renegade, which was a cool title. No one remembers that one, but it was great. But Command & Conquer let you do all that stuff, right? Like you could have different tanks, you could have units, you can have ships, and you could in the Red Alert you could have ships and planes and all that stuff. And I think we just moved on from that. But I also think it's like music and movies. We probably will rotate with what's in gaming. There will be a big comeback maybe of RTS one day, just like, specific trends of clothing came back or specific trends of music came back.
Hmm. Well, Slipgate Gaming is trying it this year with Tempest Rising, which is kind of a copy of Command & Conquer. So we will see how well that goes.
There are many games of the old times that I would love to see redone. I mean, Westwood's Blade Runner.
Yeah,
great title.
That was actually redone. There is
a version you can play nowadays, but it's still the old game.
There is an enhanced edition actually.
Yeah, but it's just the So the original game is built on basically pictures of environment and 3D pixelated things in it. So they upped the resolution, I think, on the background, but that makes the person even look worse, right? So that is a downside to it, but still the same game. I played through it, I think, by now 5 times in my life.
It's controversial, yeah. We actually had an interview with the coder that worked with the team that did the enhanced version, and he mentioned that. Yeah. I see. This is the we nerd out about various topics episode here. Well, so let me ask you, when I looked at the shows you did, it has some kind of a Giga feel, like Nitro and so on.
Nitro Nights.
Nitro Nights, right? So is that intentional?
Since there are not many other game shows, I would assume for a German, because we only had NBC Giga, every show that is and is done in the studio kind of looks like Giga, if you remember that. Is it intentional? No. Is it the bigger question probably right now is, what is the actual content that we want, right? Because sometimes as to what we say is not what we actually consume, right? So that's what we're currently trying to figure out. Like Nitro Nights, we wanted to do such a format because we wanted to invite people to a studio and have them in front of camera, right? We had James Baldwin there. We had the guys from LFM there, right? Explaining to why LFM was a great idea to the sim racing community. And I think that is important. Are we there yet that it's big? Probably not, because sim racing is growing. We kind of finding our place, right, in general. And right now, it still takes a while until the sim racing community picks up the news. We still think it's quite fast, but it's nowhere near what Counter-Strike is, right? I could drop a hint to Counter-Strike 2 right now, and it would take 30 seconds for someone to have the same on Reddit, right? And it'd been all over the place. And sim racing is a bit slower. So I think that's the same with our content right now. Like we do that because we had the chance to do it, and we thought people deserved it to be in a studio, and everyone who visited us at the HQ was like, oh, that's great, right? I mean, never see that for a sim racing event, not sim racing event, for a sim racing show. And I want to go forward with that in general. But we also have to see, like, okay, what is the future of YouTube content? Because we want to do proper content. We want to do entertaining content, but we want to do content that has knowledge that you really want to know about, right? That helps you out in your own adventure in virtual racing. And Nitro Nights is just one part of that, right? Or the entire concept of Nitro Nights and having such a show. And that's it. So it has nothing to do with, oh, we saw that in the past, we want to copy that. It was more like, what is currently not happening in sim racing? That was one of the things. Yes, they happen podcasts, but did people ever come together? Because I can tell you, it's completely different to have them sitting next to you on a couch and just chat and have that feeling than doing like a podcast right now. And that's what we want to offer. Like we want to do things in sim racing that have not been done yet because people just couldn't do it yet. And that's why we team up and want to do even more of that stuff to bring it and introduce it to our community. And then we see what we all like, right? Maybe we don't like specific things, and then we do something else. But and I think in general, also sim racers, not just the professional drivers, also like I said, people that did LFM, livery creators. We had the guy that did the Trackmania big tournament in the Nordics. He was in the studio and all that stuff. They deserve that.
I saw that episode, but I don't remember his name now. Yeah.
It's like, and I don't want to butcher his name, that's why I don't say it right now. But like, they do a ton of work. There's so many people in the sim racing community or virtual racing community that do a ton of work that are not professional drivers. Like I said,
why butchering? You mean pronunciation, getting it wrong?
Yes.
Who cares? You know.
That's why, like, I think his first name is Eric. But I don't want to go further than that.
I mean, I actually have this little story. I mean, off the record, I interviewed Alexei Pechetnov, the founder of the inventor of Tetris, you know, and I was practicing his name for a whole evening, like Alexei Pechetnov, and during his interview, he said like, yeah, it sounds okay, it sounds all right, it's no problem, and he was calling me constantly George. Like George. I'm like, no, you can't correct Alexei Pechetnov and tell him you are pronouncing my name wrong all the time. You can't do that. So I just let him go do that. But
he's famous. It's fine.
Yeah, you know. So this is how it goes. You know. Here's the next question though. How will the fact that you now are together with Race Department, how will that complement the shows, or in the different way of the question, how will OverTake complement the forum and the modding scene that Race Department offers? I mean, will you talk more about the content of OverTake in the forums, or will you talk more about the forums and the mods and the possibilities in the shows? What is planned ahead? I mean, there must be some content crossover now.
I will leave the forum part to Bram because I think he's the right one to answer that because I know his answer already. And then I will do the content part. We get this. We're a team.
No, the community, I don't think will change that much. The questions that are discussed there, the running stories, they're not much different than what OverTake and Race Department produce, I think, as content. So that will probably remain the same. To answer your question, OverTake currently, as I perceive it, is a website that looks after esports, looks after heroes, and what Renee just said, highlights individuals from the scene. One of the things that I would love to do and bring to OverTake is that we also showcase a little bit more the creative side of sim racing. So the anonymous modder sitting at home, spending 1,600 hours in his gaming room creating a car or a track or a fantastic livery that he paints. I mean, there's so much special people out there that need a little bit of recognition, a little bit of love, and a little bit of sunshine that we have not always been able to give them, that they absolutely need to be rewarded with a little bit of more publicity. And I can imagine that we would do a special feature on that, and that we have I don't know, maybe a Mod of the Month showcase of a member of the month, or show the community that there's more than just the fast driving aliens out there, because they're the ones that get most publicity. But the entire sim racing pyramid is filled with really, really talented people in their respective niches and specialities.
A documentary about how it all happened, how modding began, especially from the racing point of view. That would be interesting. Pitch it to Netflix, you know?
Yeah, sure.
It will be Survive to Drive. Let's call it.
Yeah, survive to thrive, but more like the Lego approach, you know, like the Lego brick community, where you have like, you know, like the neighbor's kid coming up with a new figure for a certain set or something and pitching it to Lego and actually getting paid for it. I think they call it B model. You know,
yeah, there's a program from Lego by now. Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's like basically what Bram answered already, and what you asked kind of showed what we tried to explain on the previous answer, right? So, will there be video content going forward in the forum? It's a place where people can discuss whatever. I would be happy for them to discuss it. If they discuss it because they have feedback or whatever, great, right? Do we need to somehow push the content into the forum? I don't think so. Like I said, that's the place for the community to discuss, right? And as Bram already mentioned, so we had, let's say, the more prominent figures of our scene, but we always wanted to do exactly that, like highlight the community, right? So we started way smaller. We have the screenshot of the month, for example, right, where we highlight the people that do incredible screenshots on it. We did livery contests. Now, with coming together with Race Department, there is this huge community that we now finally can draw from our own community, kind of, and say like, hey, all right, let's look that up. Who was building a cool new fantasy track that spent 200 hours on it? Let's highlight them. So that's exactly what we were looking for. Like, we had this, and we had to go for the bigger names because that's the one that we could find. And now with having Race Department as part of us and having Bram around, we can be like, oh, great. We can actually now go into this big community and be like, hey, who needs recognition? Who should be? Who has a cool story to tell? What should we show people out there and all that? Because we don't want to only showcase the Baldwins or whatever the names that you know already. Because as I said, there are so many people that put hours and hours in sim racing on so many sides of it, be it content creation, be it modding, be it livery creation, whatever. We had a hero of the month. He did, I think, the liveries for an entire series in just 2 days. And they were all great, like for the big teams in 2 days. Incredible work, right?
Yeah.
Because I did deliveries for my first team, and I know it's a shit ton of work. so I appreciate these people doing it, right? And so that's exactly what we come together once again. Like, no, we don't want to misuse the forum to promote anything. With the forum, we now have a place where we can say to people, hey, if you don't want to discuss that just in the YouTube comments, there is a thread in our forum, right? Go there, discuss it with the entirety of the community, not just the people who watch the video. And then on the other hand, we can draw from this forum because they might discuss a topic and we're like, hey, that's a hot topic. We actually can get information because there's a certain upper hand that comes with being OverTake. It's a bit easier for us to approach publishers to get information from someone, right? So if there is a big topic and it's like, hey, what happened here? What's the story behind Project Cars 3? We could go there and be like, all right, we figure out and we do a video on that because it seems like our community wants to know about it. And I think that's the real synergy.
And you can actually tell the person, come to the studio. So we can make a video out of it. Exactly. Yeah, but I think the documentary idea Bram just mentioned, it's totally brilliant because me personally, I would be the perfect customer because I have no idea about modding. I mean, I know about racing games, but I never dared to fiddle with the files and modify the games.
Jörg, it's magic. It's like this, and then it's done.
Right. Yeah.
Just hit the red button and it's there.
Exactly. That's what I learned at Studio 397 from what the community told me on how to do my job. So basically, it's only a release button. There's nothing else. It's just a button.
Nothing else.
And you hit it.
Upload to Steam, done. Yeah.
Yes.
That is how my parents tell me I fix their PC problems.
You see, it's always how it looks for the outside.
Yeah.
To add another little part to your question, George. No, sorry. What's really important, I think, especially in the last 3 years since the pandemic, we've seen a huge influx of new sim racers, right? People that sat at home, probably motorsport fans that could not watch the real racing on television, picked up on the esports hype and got into this genre. And that keeps on happening today, right? So there's still quite some growth with new players entering the genre. I know that Race Department is perceived probably as a hardcore PC sim racing community, but originally, we have not founded this as a sim race department or a hardcore race department. It is a race department that should be open also for newcomers. And like I said, I I have a long history in games, but if you're new to the genre, it's quite intimidating, right? It's complex. Games are not the easiest to install. You have peripherals like steering wheels, like pedal sets, like VR headsets that need to be installed and configured. It's overwhelming. So if we can change one thing for the better, is that we need to be there for the starting gamer as well. So if you're new, you're picking up a steering wheel in a toy store or at an online store, or I don't know, secondhand on eBay, purchasing your first game, whether that is a hardcore PC game or maybe a sim game genre, that's fine. If we could help making that really steep learning curve that takes approximately a year or two to figure out the in-depth what sim racing is about, if we can shorten that with cool videos, with cool content, with interviews, with, I don't know, guides, tutorials, anything that can shorten that whole journey, that's the bonus. That's the extra, that's the cherry on the cake. That would really proud. I think we would all be really proud if we can achieve that, if we can shorten that journey and be more open.
And I mean, it's also, just recently I saw, the press mentioning that people of a certain age group don't know how to use PCs anymore because they are most used to use tablets and smartphones, and yeah. Probably if you ask them about racing games, they would say like Asphalt, you know. Like, okay, that's not really what I consider hardcore racing sim game, but
me neither.
Perhaps
but
for the smartphone, yeah.
No, but I think that is a that's an old debate. I think in going around in the sim racing community, not always a fair one, because if Asphalt or CSR Racing or Real Racing 3 on your phone, if that is your entry game, or Mario Kart on Nintendo, if that is your entry game, fine.
Yeah.
If that means that we cover that entry game on OverTake 2.0, and people come to the website and come to the YouTube channel, and they see, cool, I like racing around Mario around this track, but I also see there's R Factor 2. I also see there's Gran Turismo. I also see there's Forza, there's iRacing. There is a whole world that people don't know about, because we're a uber niche still, right? In the grand scheme of things, motorsport in general is not a really, besides Formula One, not really a popular hobby. But
no, I think. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So I think that there's a very overlooked point, and Bram and me discussed it already on a call, I think 2 weeks ago, regarding that. It's like, yes, nowadays with everyone being on Discord, everyone being on Facebook, you have the feeling that there are a lot of people going from nothing to iRacing, full 12K rig, triple screens, VR, boom, in there, right? But that's mostly not the case, especially nowadays, where we see that, for example, there's not a huge starting interest anymore in buying your first car with 18, watching motorsport, right? That all declined. Yeah. Nowadays, they rather want to buy a new laptop or a new smartphone whatsoever instead of their first car. We need to find a way to introduce our hobby to those that might have never had contact with it, right? Yeah. And I, for example, as I said, I started competitively with Need for Speed, and I forgot about Grand Prix, so I didn't saw Live for Speed until one day in PC Games in the magazine. There was one small article about Live for Speed, and I saw it and was like, oh, first of all, I like Need for Speed, but I would love to do that in a proper cockpit perspective again. And I can have my own liveries, which was a huge thing back in the days in Live for Speed. I was like, oh, cool, that is the next step. So I wanted to go from, okay, that was nice third-person racing, but now I would like something that is a bit more like the real thing. So I was looking for the next step. And this, even though we have people now going from 0 to 100, we still need to consider that there are many people that need an easier entrance, not due to their skill or whatsoever, but due to their interest. They don't know yet that there might be huge fans of racing and of the entire action. And for that, we need to make sure that there are games and our sims or whatever, in many ways, to get people in. That's the only way for us to grow. That's the only way to support the very expensive industry of actually building these games, because sim racing titles are not cheap. to build, and they take a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of licensing nowadays. So we need all of that, and that's why it's like I'm the last one that would argue, oh, we would never say something about Real Racing 3. For some people, that is an entry because they never had another chance. They might never had a PC. They might never heard about R-Factor, Assetto Corsa whatsoever, but they, for whatever reason, picked that up on the App Store, and someone has to explain to them, coming from the App Store, how to install R-Factor 2.
Yeah. But here's the point you two guys are having, which is actually valid. EA used that as a reason to make the graffiti style in Unbound Need for Speed, because they wanted to get the age group of gamers 20 and younger to regain or get a new interest into the Need for Speed series. Mm-hmm. And the shocking thing is, people in my age group, 40 and above, they actually hammered on EA, I would say. They blamed EA for making the same mistake Ron Gilbert did with The Last Monkey Island and using a horrible graphic style. And I still remember the official... The Last Monkey Island. Yeah, well, it's true, actually. It's true. Many people in my age group hate the graphic style of The Last Monkey Island game. And the same happened with Need for Speed Carbon when EA put up the first trailer videos with the graphic effects. And I remember that EA was gushing and saying, like, don't worry, you can disable it. We won't do the same mistake as Ron Gilbert. So what is your point? Perhaps let's start with Bram, because I think you are older than René. Are you those people disliking the new graphic style that Need for Speed Carbon is coming up with, or are you fine with the change?
Unbound.
Sorry, Unbound. Yeah. What did you say?
Yeah,
you said Carbon.
Yeah, Carbon. Sorry, Unbound. It was Unbound. Yeah.
No, it's not my genre, so I have to admit I really don't play Need for Speed. Haven't for quite some years, since Porsche.
But you read about the scandal, right? About the new graphic style. You didn't?
Yeah, I've seen the graphics.
You see?
And to be honest, I've seen in previews and stuff. Actually, I'm fine with that. I'm always a little bit annoyed when people always complaining about EA because whatever they do, they can never do it right. Right? If it's Need for Speed, they don't do it right. For Project Cars, it's not all right. It's not all right for F1. It's never good. It's always say people always complain. So is that because of the masses playing it? That because of millions of people buying it? That there are millions of negative vocal people? I think if there's any innovation, if a graphic style can bring in new players, sure, why not? I don't care, right? If that is important for a gaming studio to bring in new people into the genre, I'm fine with that. I don't like it, but it's fine for younger kids. Yeah, sure, why not?
Thank you. So what do you think, René?
So I admit, when I saw the first screenshot, I wasn't happy. We discussed it at OverTake, obviously, right? If something comes up, we immediately come together and discuss it.
I know. I saw the review of Unbound.
Yeah. So
with the Rüdiger part.
Yeah. So it was like, I didn't like it. Then I heard you can turn it off, and it was like, you know what? Then I don't mind, because I think we way too often make a huge drama of something that we can just turn off. Where it's like, if you don't like it, don't do it, right? That's like a game mode, and you argue, exactly. I don't like the game. So then don't play the game mode. Like, I never played FIFA Ultimate Team. I play the career mode. I don't care about Ultimate Team, right? So you can just ignore that. Have to say though, I kept having it enabled in the game because I thought it actually looked cool. And what Bram already said, can they actually do it right? Because keep in mind here, Need for Speed now spends over 20 years. Oh, wait, more than that. It's like nearly 30 years by now.
Yeah.
So how do you actually want to do that? On one side, you would love to please the people that, like me, grew up with the first Need for Speed, which is a completely different game.
Yeah.
And then you need to be successful on the market because you need to sell units to actually make it. So it also needs to attract a new audience. So whatever you do, it's really hard to bring all these different things in one game. And we've already talked about nostalgia, which is a huge discussion point as well, right? Would Need for Speed Underground really be good nowadays? So probably not. Means you can't really do it right. And then you have to keep in mind that it's nearly always the very vocal minority complaining about it, because it's the same when you want to buy a car nowadays. If I buy cars regularly, that's one of the downsides of my life, because I can't stop myself from buying cars. So you look it up on Google. The only thing you find is people telling you that's the worst car ever. I had engine problems whatsoever, because obviously someone that is happy with the car doesn't run into the next forum to tell everyone. He's not going on Race Department and be like, installed R Factor 2, works flawless. Thanks, guys. Bye. It's not happening, right? People go there when they have problems. So it's really hard already nowadays to really understand and estimate the perception of your game, because you will always have the vocal minority. The same happens to us in sim racing. For example, if we go for one specific point, working at R Factor 2, we always have people coming to us and be like, hey, why do you not do more historic race cars? So first of all, there's a huge problem with it. Historics are, even though community thinks they're cheaper, mostly they're more expensive in terms of licensing for whatever reason. And it's also hard to get the data, right? I can tell you for the MP4, what's the MP4 12, the Senna car that we released, we actually had pictures of the handwritten notes of their drivers from back in the days about this car to build it, right? So historic cars are quite hard to do. And while I also enjoy historic cars, if we look at data and see what people actually race, many people buy historic cars, not as in how many people buy a GT3 pack, but there are people buying historic. But then out of the people that buy the historic, a very small part of it is actually using them. The rest just has them because they're really interested in the car, but they never actually race with it. And that's the thing. Like if you would ask our Discord community on Alpha 2, probably everyone will tell you, but people always ask for historic. Just do what they ask for. Yeah, but that's not really what would be working, right, for the company itself. Just because it is different to what we perceive from feedback. And that's why I think EA in general, also with, it's way better to hate than something, especially in the YouTube world. It works a lot better doing a video about, EA did the next Need for Speed and they totally screwed it up. We all know that works, right? So it is really hard for them to do whatever to be perceived as good. I think the new Unbound, the graphic style was cool. I was fine with it. I even liked the anime characters, and I thought I would never say that because I didn't like the mix of like realistic look and then these characters. But it worked for me, and they had good new mechanics like this that during the week have to get enough money for the weekend. So it's a bit of strategizing. Do I really want to take this race? Do I want to take the risk? Hey, that was the first time ever in a Need for Speed that I have to make up my mind about if I take the risk or not. Normally, you don't care and you just race around. So that is a new age for Need for Speed, and that was very, very well made. So I think that they're doing good. Like, yeah, it's not perceived as the one thing anymore because it's also not the only game anymore. Forza Horizon is big, right? Forza is big in general. Gran Turismo. There's way more competitors back in the days, but I still think they really try their hardest to give us a cool game. It's just very hard nowadays to even figure out what would be the right step. So they're trying.
And the new test drive is coming out sometime.
Test drive Solar Crown, yep.
Now we're talking.
Yeah.
If you can't let the windows go up and down on the button, not interested.
Yep.
Well, I mean, there's a similar discussion about Unbound, like no cockpit view, no purchase.
Yeah, but they don't have cockpit view for how many years now? Keep in mind that I think it was Need for Speed 3 the first time, where you only had cockpit view if you had a specific graphics card, which I think was 3DFX.
Yeah,
if you had a Voodoo card, then you had cockpits. If you had a 3D card, no cockpit for you. Well,
who never uses cockpit view?
You.
Exactly. So Mr. Hardcore himself. See that this shows how not hardcore I am. No, I barely drive in cockpit view. It's always
even for the sim racers, for the Formula 1 and stuff.
Yeah, you know why?
Use them.
Because I sincerely think that the cockpit view in any racing game is totally wrong. The moment I can see my feet in my real car while I'm driving, right? That's what happens in racing games. So you can see your feet, you can see your arms moving. I don't see that when I'm in a car. When I'm in a car, I'm looking through the window.
I know
So
you're old, Bram.
Yep.
I can show you the settings regarding seat position and FOV.
I know. So that's my whole point. You need to tweak with the field of view to actually make it pretty. And if you make it pretty and realistic, it's no longer the cockpit view that's standard in a game. It is a mix between bonnet view and cockpit view, which Simbin back in the day called action cam, which is basically your face strapped to the window, which is your realistic view. And that's what I play. So yeah, but it takes a lot of time to tweak your camera settings. To go back to your last remark, Jörg, what you said about the future of games. What I would hope from an EA, from a Microsoft or a Sony in the future is to take a risk, do something new. Because what I dislike the most in our beloved hobby is the lack of progress that we're making. It's still racing circuits in circles on a static map. And what I would like, and maybe I'm a visionary and maybe I still need to wait 20 years for it to happen. But if I look at Flight Simulator 2020, and I'm looking all these videos on YouTube, and I think, why is nobody connecting the dots, right? Why can't we have a driving/racing simulator in the same environment as Flight Simulator 2020? With having active Bing maps to race on 3D map cities that are real life like, right? I'm not sure where you live in Germany, but how cool would it be if we have a challenge to race from your house to mine, right? With a supercar or with the classic cars that Renee spoke about. That is truly invention and innovation, which is currently really, really lacking in the space. And that is something I would love to see. Innovations, big ones.
Well, I saw once a video on YouTube, I don't know which channel it was, but they were arguing today's it's more about the licenses, especially for Formula One racing games, to make a new installment each year. And there's not enough time in between the different racing titles to really innovate and make something different.
I mean, with yearly releases, there's obviously always the frame, right? But there's the issue. You can only, like, you basically decide as a studio at one point to build a new base code. And on that base, you will build the next 3-4 titles, and then you go for a new one again, right?
Yeah.
Because it takes so much time to polishing. But this is also down to the actual people playing, because keep in mind, like, Bram's idea sounds amazing. But then if we now would ask the community, for example,
do you want to
most people would tell you, we want to have the next realistic Spa, Monza, GT3, whatever, right? Which is
do you want
fair.
to wait to do you want to wait 10 years?
Yeah, it's the thing is, on one side is the group of sim racers that is sim racing due to the immersion as they want to recreate something, like the experience of being a Le Mans 24 driver, the experience being in the Daytona 500, whatever it might be. And then there are the people that are mixed. I'm a mix. I really like the immersion, but I also, since I like Live for Speed, which had unlicensed cars, unlicensed content, I like the actual racing. So I wouldn't mind if you give me fantasy tracks with great fantasy cars, or the city track that Bram was talking about, and we do a competition on it. I'm all up for that, right? Because it sounds amazing, and if it's a believable environment in terms of physics, so I can connect the dots to race there, I would definitely be interested. And then there is the group that is more into cars and doesn't mind the environment or the racing, right? They play Car Mechanic Simulator, they can play Apex Point that just came out as early release, right? Street Legal Redline Racing for the older people out there. So there are many. A racing player you can't just say it as easy as a Counter-Strike player. That is very narrow, right? Counter-Strike is there, it's a title, everyone can play it, but even though we always refer to, oh, we all know what we want, that's not true, because sim racing is very broad with what people actually want from it and what they like in terms of experience. And I think that's why currently, now that we have the opportunity to build realistic games, that is the easiest and first step to do. Recreate something that we already have. Recreate F1, recreate World Endurance Championship, whatever it might be. And then the next step is what we see with indie studios on other genres, right? The influx of creativity. okay, what can we do as next step, which might not be rooted in real life racing, but still has the same effect on the drivers and that they enjoy. And I agree to Bram, it would be great to see that, but we also know that the market isn't that easy. You can't just spend 100 million on such a title and then realize it's only Bram and me playing.
It actually happened. 2 examples: the game Blur from Activision.
Yep.
That from 2010, which is actually an adult version of Super Mario Kart. You know, it's one of my most favorite games. Very hard to get, because if you want to go multiplayer, you need the serial key. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And Activision still didn't shut down the servers. So that's great. I can still play it with friends. But it's such a unique game. But it totally failed. Or another game is Split Second. They actually canceled the second part.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah.
But wait, all of that is still racing. And I say that now because I actually work, depends on how you see it right now, on an arcade title that has racing and tracks, but actually no lap time, nor any error, because it's a team-based 4v4 game on a track where you can also go vice versa and cross, and basically you gather energy to score a point for your team. So it's a team game. Yeah. It's no racing, but same there. It's like, it's easier right now to get an investor into the next Formula One, NASCAR, whatever, that people already know, than finding someone that would invest for a title that's completely different. So yes, I would love to see something that is a bit more, even if it's arcade, team-based. Because as much as we talk about endurance racing and how team-based it is, let's be real, in the end, you're alone in your cockpit. And even if you have a teammate on track, it's like Formula One, he's not really your friend, right? Because you want to be in front of him. So I miss the cool team moments that I experienced while doing Counter-Strike, while doing League of Legends, whatever, right? Where you really come together, work on the target, right? And actively participate in the game. In endurance racing, you still work together on the same target, but actively it's only the driver in the end that brings it home. And therefore I would love to see that creativity. It's just not easy. But once again, it just shows how broad whatever car racing game, however you want to call it, could be. And how wide the field of our genre actually is. It is a niche, as Bram already said, which we should never forget while working on it currently. It's not Counter-Strike, it's not League of Legends in terms of the millions and all that, but it's what we love, it's what we have passion for, and it will be a lot of experimenting as well, because who knows? So it's a big scene, it's a big place, right? And we will try things, and hopefully we will, while doing that, we will actually advance every single part of it. The arcade games, the simcade, the sim racing, the whatever.
Well, I just mentioned it because Bram was making the argument that we should innovate and make something different, you know, some unique experience. And then you see games like Blur and Split Second who failed. So now the question is, as I said, René, if you are an investor, do you want to invest in a new racing game that goes totally different when you know that other games who did similar things already failed, you know? And the thing is,
but innovation doesn't always mean that you need to do something radically different that nobody likes. I mean, the example of Blur, if that was a good game in 2010 and failed then, doesn't mean that should fail in 2023. Doesn't mean that you can't try it again. And from an investment point of view, I understand, right? There's this in the gaming side. There is players and there's developers. I've been on both ends, but I feel way more comfortable being on the player side, because then I can demand things and dream and think out of the box. Because I really don't care if an investor is happy with the game, because I'm not on that side. I want to, as a player, I want to have the best possible racing experience or driving experience. And by thinking out of the box, sometimes I think you can come to innovations that don't necessarily need to be super complex, but could also add a lot to current gaming franchises. As an example, I've worked for a company back in 2010 called Eye Opener Media. That was a startup with an invention at the time. We created a really small GPS box that we placed in a real life racing car, at that time with a Dutch driver called Tom Coronel. And he was driving on a real racetrack all the data was from his car directly sent to a server that was on the racetrack. From that server, the data was sent to 600 gamers at home. And here it comes. 10 years or 13 years ago, these guys could race live against a real driver racing on a real track in real time. It miserably failed because nobody wanted to invest in it. But tell me that that isn't cool. It is.
Sounds cool.
It's super cool. And if you think out of the box and go a few steps further, with games constantly developing and games constantly getting more pretty. So a F1 title in 2030 will look absolutely amazing in terms of graphics, in terms of virtual reality or augmented reality. But it's still the same series. It's still the same cars on a few tracks. How cool would it be if in 2030 you can show your kid that Michael Schumacher was one of the greatest drivers, and by loading a data set from 2010, race against him, right? Relive the entire season. So instead of consuming racing as a, I don't know, an old video documentary where you watch back the entire series or the entire race, why don't you just relive it being on the grid? Be that 21st driver on the grid. And that data and all that technology is available. We're not using it. And that is a shame because I don't need to buy a new Formula One game every year. I should buy the base game and just update my data set every year for a few quid. And that's what I need. I don't need a videotape. I don't need a DVD box. I don't need Netflix to watch Formula One. I want to be Formula One. And if I'm the fastest guy, York, I want to be on the podium next to Max, next to Lewis Hamilton, next to George Russell. I want to be that hologram. Right? And that for me, that is the future.
Well,
and that is the highest. That's the highest reward you can get in esports as well.
Now the question is, do you really want to be Max Verstappen when you see his kind of personality flaws? I'm not so sure about that.
No, but I think it's kind of cool to be on the same podium with him.
I mean,
as a
he's
hologram.
He's fast, but he has some personality issues. Just my opinion.
Oh, I do not disagree. People think because I'm Dutch, I'm a huge fan. I'm not. I'm not really a fanboy of any driver. I just enjoy the sports, so I don't really care who wins, to be honest.
Well, I mean, no doubt he is probably the fastest driver on the track, but he's not so cool about it when it comes to his competitors. And actually, I saw his father is even worse in some aspects. So you see where it's coming from. It stays within the family, which is kind of sad somehow. You know, I don't know. It's just my opinion.
I think that is very harsh to say. First of all, do you know him? Yeah, I bumped into him in Monaco once.
Oh,
but
really?
Did you ever spend a day with him? You didn't, right? So
I didn't.
Do we know that drama sells well in terms of media? Yes.
Right?
Can you look everyone look bad by a single picture? Oh yes, that is quite simple, right? Someone can take a screenshot from this podcast where I might look super bored all of a sudden just because I turn around and someone's like, "Look at Renee."
Good point.
So disrespectful to the podcast, like so. I think drama was always a part of motorsport, and I think it makes it interesting, which is why I think, in general, Drive to Survive is a great idea. I sparked my interest again into F1, I admit. I stopped basically after the Michael Schumacher era, and I came back to it. Now I actually watch the races live, and I didn't do that for ages. And we need to have, we know that Alonso was always made out as the villain, right? We now had Hamilton, who obviously had a great image as well and doing great stuff. Don't want to take anything away from that, like charity and all that stuff. So obviously, he gets an opposite created so that you have both sides. People want the bad boy, which right now is Max Verstappen. And then the good guy from old class is Lewis Hamilton, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's very harsh. Like I said, I might be wrong. Maybe he's off. I have no clue. I never spent enough time with him to judge. But keep in mind that we have someone in our hands who is really good going up against someone that has 7 titles already. So you need to be ruthless to make it. And we all know that. Michael Schumacher was ruthless in some cases to make it, right? Max had to do the same. He comes from a family that pushed him to do that. So that's a given, right? He did not. It did not happen to become good in F1. He was created basically. How do you want to react in terms of media? It's like, look at Kimi Räikkönen. Everyone loves when Kimi Räikkönen is giving an interview where he clearly shows that he doesn't give an F at all, right? He's just like, oh, goodbye. And everyone celebrates that. If Max is doing it, and I'm the same as Bram. I can watch whatever sport and root for whatever. I just choose someone and then I root for them that day because I really don't care who wins. But it is that simple case of, is it just the created villain, and is it just, do we know, and are we really sure that this is the case, right? I don't know. I think it's just the way to go. Like
To be a winner, and I think it's regardless of any sports, right? Whether you're a football player, and probably more and more, it's more clear in individual sports, you need to have a certain character, right? And probably Ayrton Senna was probably not the nicest. Alain Prost was probably not the nicest either. Michael Schumacher for sure was not the nicest towards his teammates and other drivers. Go in any sport, right? Go to tennis. Is Roger Federer always nice? Not sure. Is Michael Jordan always nice? No, I doubt it. But to be successful, you need a certain character. And I think Max has that character. Similar as Alonso for sure has that character, but was a little bit of unlucky in choosing his teams. And I can name a few esport drivers as well that have kind of a character, right?
And we know some of the most successful ones that went into real racing also have a background of where they were banned for cheating and all that stuff. It's like, to be successful, you have to be a certain brat, definitely.
Push the envelope.
It is that way.
Yeah, it is.
But it's interesting. You mentioned like both of you like 3 times you are in a niche. Now racing isn't a niche, right? But sim racing is a niche. Or
I would say racing is a niche.
Is it niche?
Very. Yeah, very.
I mean.
I don't have hard figures, but I always tend to believe that 99% of the people that watch motorsport watch Formula One, and all the other motorsports are watched by the remaining 1%. So all these series out there, grassroots racing, national championships, world championship of lower class spec series, that is watched by a handful of people. And within that 1%, there is also sim racing and esports. So we have a long way to go, and we're large, right? The niche is growing, but if you compare it to any sports on consoles, for example, we're still relatively small.
Perhaps if you compare it to soccer.
Look, that's the first problem with racing already. Soccer needs a ball and the outside, right? That's quite simple, achievable for everyone. So most people in their life at one point tried out soccer, right? So it creates an easier connection to people.
You mean football, right? You mean football. Let's get that straight. You mean football because soccer doesn't really exist.
Okay,
it's invented by Americans who play American hand eggball.
Okay, foosball.
But here's the thing: foosball is also another term for table soccer.
Yes,
but it also doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah, but you all know which sport I meant. And now so that's why I think racing is a niche already, because it's harder to get into. And myself, I now do real racing. I have a small little team with sim races where we go real racing, and it's very complicated and very costly to actually make it. So football is a lot easier. And then looking at the gaming side of things, every PC comes with a keyboard and a mouse. So you're quite close to League of Legends, Counter-Strike, Dota, StarCraft, basically everything, Fortnite, right? While they never come with a steering wheel. So same there. It's just harder to get people into it because there's a higher gap that they have to go for to actually experience what we love. They need the right equipment. They need the right PC, the right displays and the triple screens of VR, whatever, for it to be really, really cool, or widescreen. And while soccer, according to racing, or football, foosball, whatever it might be, it's just so simple. You buy a ball, you go out there with friends, and you play. And therefore, I think racing is definitely also a niche. Yes.
Perhaps I see it differently because my career in gaming started with the Commodore 64, and it always came with a joystick, and that was good enough for me for racing inputs.
But it was good enough back in the days for every game.
Yeah, it was.
Which
right,
isn't the case
right,
anymore.
you know. And one of my favorite games to this day is the original Test Drive from 1987.
Yes.
I really love that one, and I see Pram loves it too, because when I mentioned Test Drive, he was like, "Now we are talking." So.
Sorry,
Yeah.
but when we talk about the greatest games, that list starts with Lode Runner, Lemmings, and then the first racing game. Sorry.
Okay.
The Lemmings was pretty cool. Come on.
Yeah. No, but what you just said, what's interesting, what you just said, Gabe, about the joystick you mentioned that came with the C64. It's a misconception that you need really extensive and expensive hardware in sim racing to enjoy what we're doing. People always think, because I ran RaceDepartment for 16 years, that I must have the most beautiful cockpit at home with motion platforms, simulators, triple screens, and all that. I have a nice rig now, assembled in the last 2 years. Before that, I had a Logitech G25 steering wheel, which is just the average steering wheel that you can buy, right? Just go to any gaming store, you can buy a Logitech wheel. Clamped to my desk, and it worked, right? Set of pedals to go with it. That is the easiest setup in the world. Did my whole rig make me faster? No. Did it make me a better driver? Absolutely not. It's more immersive. It's cool. It's cool to sit in the cockpit. It's cool to have a really cool steering wheel with high torque vibrations in it. It's absolutely amazing. Does it make you faster? No. Do you need it to enjoy our hobby? Absolutely not, right? Start with your first steering wheel. Buy a second-hand Logitech 325. The thing will not break. It is an unbreakable device that will keep on working for the next 20 years probably. And even if you need a spare part or you need to get it fixed or serviced, there's always one guy that can do it. It's the best investment ever. That comes from a really nice story, by the way, with my first steering wheel, because that was my wow moment. When I ordered my Medium laptop, I obviously had to play with keyboard, which I was used to from back in the days, right? Always played with a keyboard. But I lost it to people online that were using a steering wheel. So at the time, with my, at that time, girlfriend, I was in Antwerp in Belgium, where they have the Mare, which is the high street wheel shops. Walking there, and all of a sudden, it looked at me from the shopping window, the Cytec steering wheel, and it looked at me, and it almost had a text balloon on top of it that said, "Buy me."
Was it the R300 whatever? This like
I have
one?
I have no idea. I somewhere have an old picture, but I need to dig that up. But it was buy me now. So I had to go inside, and there it was, huge box, steering wheel. I thought, oh man, I need to have this. And she looked at me and she said, "You're not going to buy that, right? That's really, really childish." Well, end of story. End of story. The wheel came. She went out, never returned, obviously, because we were not a match. But
Wow.
the wheel and I were a perfect match, right? That was the first one. And that changed for me the whole racing part, because that was racing. That was real racing. That was the part that was always missing, right? Pedals were missing, steering wheel were missing. And that is immersion. And that is, I think, one of the coolest things that you can get in our niche is the feeling of being a racing driver. And that is not costly. That can be super cheap.
Now that you mention it, the racing wheel I'm using is actually a Rally GT Clutch Edition from Thrustmaster from 2006. And it still works in Windows 11.
Cool.
With the Windows 8.1 driver.
And that's the thing, right? That is your entry wheel, just like you have an entry game.
No, it's not. No,
no,
it's not my entry wheel. My entry wheel was a cheap 50 € plastic wheel from Logitech, and I broke the pedals because at one point I was driving in GTA and I broke too much, and I broke off the plastic pedal, the braking pedal. So that is why I got the Thrustmaster one, because there the pedal unit is made of metal, so I can't break it, you know.
The Destroyer.
The Destroyer.
Yeah.
pedal to the metal, man.
Yeah. That's just how Jörg rolls.
And the second. And I bought it a second time, and there I managed to destroy the force feedback motor. It just stopped working at some point. So somehow I destroyed those cheap €50 Logitech steering wheels.
I think I never destroyed a steering wheel while driving. I can tell you, which is a very dark moment of my life, that at one point, qualifying for an ESL championship in Live for Speed, that was purely hot lapping, and I'm an awful hot lapper because I hate it. I want to drive with other cars and traffic on the track. I don't like to drive qualification, so it was really bad. And I think I just signed my first pro contract back in the day, so that was a few euros per month, and I was sure that clock on top of the screen was lying 100% because that lap had to be a lot quicker. So I ripped off that steering wheel and threw it out of the window.
Ooh.
And then realizing that I only had 2 days to actually qualify for this event and it wasn't my contract to qualify. So I had to ask my parents, like, can you drive me to Media Markt so I can buy a new steering wheel?
Whoa.
That was, I think, the only time that I actually a steering wheel did not survive. All the others, I either still have somewhere or I gave away for others so they could drive.
Wow.
Because it holds on. Obviously, there's cool technology by now. Yes, there is. But the fun of race, once you actually in a race and you fight someone wheel to wheel, because really the speed, there's a certain bonus you get with great brake pedal, right? Because it's a bit easier and all that. But whatever you get used to, you can be quick. And as soon as you do wheel to wheel racing, you don't know which steering wheel you have in your hand anyway. So it's like, don't go for that. Like, start with something, figure out if you like racing, if you like the thrill of doing that. If you're okay with spending a lot on water, because you will have a shower after every single race, and that will definitely change the bill for your house. If you're fine with that, then sim racing is for you. To be aware of the risks.
I mean, my thoughts were like, hopefully this one holds, because there was a price point difference between €50 and €2.99. So I was like, okay. So I'm glad that it's still working to this day, because
no, but that is good. That's a really good comparison you're making there. And a $2.99 steering wheel might sound very expensive at first, but if you have met your first favorite racing game, and for me, the one that I played most hours with was probably the race series from Simbin. So we're talking 2,500 hours of game time, right?
Wow.
Divide that by the $2.99 that you paid for your steering wheel, right? What did it cost per hour? Nothing. It's super cheap, right? For all that fun, man. I'm back from the age, you probably as well, when you threw in a Deutsche Mark or a German, a Dutch Gilder into a slot, right? Where you did 3 laps for a Gilder, right? Imagine how many laps we have done on our cheap or expensive hardware. It is super cheap. If you play it enough, if you're really committed to your hobby, then justifying $300 for a steering wheel with nice pedals is an absolute bargain. It's super cheap.
Well, it was in 2006, and I remember it was either this cheap €50 one that I broke 2 times, or the Rally GT from Thrustmaster for $2.99, or the most expensive was actually the G25 from Logitech.
Yeah,
that was the most expensive one
in the end, I still have it because the G25 is still my backup wheel. It rattles a little bit, but it refuses to break. It is by far, I think, the most durable piece of hardware I've ever bought, including everything, right? TVs, stuff from your kitchen, everything breaks except for the G25. It won't break. It's incredible.
So you think I should have invested 200 euros more back then and go with the 500 wheel instead of the $2.99?
If you can find a cheap one on eBay for less than 100, it's still a steal. Buy it. You will not regret it.
And I guess as it's typical with Logitech, there's still somebody patching the drivers for the new Windows versions, right?
No idea, but I think
I mean,
that
there's still people 3D printing new wheels for it. So I would say you're quite safe.
Yeah. And I think shortly after that, there was this other Logitech thing called Mimo.
No, the Momo.
Momo.
Yeah, the Momo.
Momo,
yeah.
Momo.
Oh, yeah, the
Logitech
Momo.
Momo 4s.
Yeah,
A
Yeah.
black
was
one
before.
and a red one.
Yeah. With 180 degrees of steering rotation.
I had the black one when I went into the Pro Series, and then later on, I was lucky enough to at least drive on the red one because the red one was a limited edition, different pedals and all that. Metal shifter, like a pedal shift, and you couldn't get it, so it was really hard. So I always had to be stuck with the black one. But I loved it. It looked like a proper Momo racing. I mean, if you see it nowadays, you're like, oh, okay, but it looked like a proper racing wheel. I really loved it. It was a great wheel.
Yeah,
I'm up for that.
Well, when I was preparing, when René asked me to prepare some questions, I was like, oh my God, they are probably talking me to the ground because compared to you two guys, I probably know nothing about racing. So I'm actually...
Which is correct.
Just to make that clear here.
Yeah, just like make that clear. That's correct. That's the right assessment. Yeah.
But we all just nerds in the end. I mean, I think that was one of the big points. What the race department community was afraid of, right? Like us, like at OverTake, the other side, basically, not being the same sim racing heads that other people at race department. But I know my team. Believe me, they're all like me. They all different directions sometimes. Jonas loves AC, and I like AC, but it's not my favorite racing game, and he absolutely loves it. But I think in looking at our team right now, and with Bram and Mesa coming to it, it's like it's a huge group of people that are way too crazy about a certain play style, which is racing.
Yeah, you have to. Otherwise, we would not have been sticking around for all this time.
True.
But I think it's the same for that. I think that's another similarity with real life, where you see ex-Formula One drivers still driving at a really high age in other series. Once you have that racing bug, it won't go away. And for me, it has been virtual. And I think if we ever go to a real track, or looking at you, René, if we ever get a real life racing license at some time
this year, Bram.
I can imagine that is as addicting as sim racing is, but it adds another element.
I can tell you it's different. It's different. Yeah, the danger is something. The older you get, the more aware of that you are.
Yeah.
I can see that with my sim racers. The younger they are, the less they think about what does it cost when it's actually crashed. Not that they ever crashed. It's a completely different angle how they attack it. But I can tell you it is addictive.
Yeah.
For sure. Totally but I can also tell you, going back to sim racing, it's not like you miss out on something. It's slightly different due to how you feel within a car. But for me, like to give a perspective, the biggest that I ever did on real racing was I raced in the 6-hour endurance race here at the Nürburgring, Rover 6-hour in the NLS, and I actually had a pole position in my class. So that's my big achievement there. And there's no difference for me starting there and racing down to a corner to doing my next league race in the sim. It is exactly the same for me from feeling wise. Yes, I like real cars and like being able to do that. But in terms of the actual thrill of driving, I do not miss anything on both, which is great. Like sim racing is just so close to it, no matter what you drive there. And the feeling of fighting someone wheel to wheel, trying to figure out what's your next move and how you can actually be quicker on that track compared to the car in front. And that's super thrilling. And that's also super thrilling in sim racing. There's absolutely no difference.
Well, the thing for me is racing is the only genre where I don't suck playing games. You know, any other genre.
So you only hang out with us because you shit in any other game. Great.
Well, I mean, there is a difference. I noticed gaming now and gaming when I was 8 years old. When I was 8 years old or 10 or something, I had better reflexes, but less thinking, less strategy, how to beat the game. And the older I get, the more I'm thinking ahead about what move I'm going to make.
While every 8-year-old is beating you.
Yeah, because they are not thinking; they are just reacting.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the same in racing games actually. Because if you, for example, if you consider someone like Bram or me, and we want to be fast at a track, we always think what would be doable in real life. Quick drivers right now, they don't care what works in real life. They try it, and then they might find something that's a lot quicker. I would never thought about that because for me it's like that wouldn't work in real life, so I wouldn't try it.
Like
it
cooling your tires in the grass.
In the grass, right? Yeah,
I would
never
not
even tried.
I would not even think about trying it. Right?
On some tracks where they see like them cuttings, like I never thought about that because I would never. There's a white line, so I'm not going over that.
Yeah,
This is
exactly.
how it is.
Don't cross it.
Did you guys see the tweet of that NASCAR race driver, the video where he actually where he actually made like, oh, I replicated the move. I
love it.
Replicate the move that I did in NASCAR 2005 on my PS2, and it actually worked in real life.
I love it because now I can go back to Need for Speed and be like, I told you it works.
Imagine him coming back in the pit lane. And the look of those mechanics, right? What the hell did you do to my car? What did you do to my car?
I still love that he tried. I mean, you have to keep in mind that moment on a sim. If it goes wrong, you hit escape. That's it. Lose a bit of iRating. If it's iRacing, who cares, right? But at that moment, he was really brave. He was like, I have to do something. I wanna succeed, but if I do this, and if it happens, like some of the sim games, you just hook, like you glitch into one of the corners and you flip up. It could have happened in real life. It could have happened, right? Because it's not perfectly round shaped. He would have looked like the biggest idiot ever, and he was just like, nope, I'll do that.
But he didn't win, right? He became 5th or something.
Yeah,
he didn't win. Cool. He didn't really win the race. So
it was cool though. He tried.
Well, he could have ended up as a pancake.
Yes, he could have ended up looking really stupid while costing his team a ton of money. But
right, amazing. Well, so the best part of this interview is actually nerding out with you guys.
Yep.
Super amazing. Yeah, well, I hope you don't mind. I have to ask all these difficult questions, of course, because I saw, of course, some positive, some negative feedback about the unification of the two, communities, right? And of course, I had to take the chance to hear what your take on it is. But it's actually impressive.
No, I will not go and delete the mod database tomorrow.
Nope. I mean, two things are impressive. For once, it's impressive that that Bram and RaceDepartment is around since 16 years. And it's also impressive that OverTake is what it is after just 3 years. It's just that's such a head start for one team, and the other team has a lot of duration and long breath and not giving up, That is what people tell me when I say, like, yeah, Scene World is celebrating 23 years this year. People are like, what, you're doing this since 23 years. How did you not get fed up with it, So that's basically...
But didn't you not once? Is there another day that you wake up and think, Scene World again?
Yeah.
No, but that's a question. Do you have days that you are not motivated to do it?
Okay. Sorry, I didn't get the question. Yeah, well, that's. I mean, the thing is, at some points where the negative things come together, where guests are not answering to emails, or when at some point we had this one point when we had too much listeners to our podcast, that our web hoster actually had to shut us down for too much traffic. Yeah. And then we saw that actually Spotify costed for trying to download all MP3 files of the podcast in one night at the same time, and the web hoster didn't like it.
Someone was really eager.
So in this moment, it's like, cool, we have a new problem now. We have to find a different web hoster. But it's also cool on the other hand, because, now we have the audience, Now you have like 800 people listening to a podcast episode. Like, wow, we never thought we would reach this number. But it's also demotivating because we had a downtime of 12 days because we are doing this in our free time, and we had to find somebody to find a way with the web hoster to get us up again, because the moment we switch it on, Spotify and all the other iTunes and so on, we're going to syndicate the MP3 files again all at once, and we had to put a stop to that. But how, So those moments were like, do I really want to go on with this? But then in other days, I'm thinking like, I have so much people I still want to interview, and there's so much history, like this Project Cars 3 interview. This will be well, this is now a historical piece because the series is not around anymore. So, and if we don't do it, who else will do it?
Well, but that's the thing, right? You said about dedication and not giving up. That is often the key to success, right? Don't give up. And for me as well, I think there have been many days in the last 70 years that I hovered with my finger over the red button and thought,
really,
shall I push it? And just because but this is the thing, right? In our niche, in our community, there have been various websites that flourished, that did really well, and then poof, all overnight, they vanished. And I've been on that receiving end as well, and also had my doubts. Should I be doing this? Why am I doing this? But then every year there is the ratio between negativity and positivity is always off, right? In any community online, I think it's often more negative than positive. However, if you receive a single email from a person that says thanks for this or thank you for that, or in my case, and that has always helped me in the 1 or 2 days a year where you think, I'm not really motivated to go online and do moderating and all that stuff, is the guy that says on Christmas Eve, when you had a racing club event, and we've been hosting races for the last 17 years as well. And it's all casual. It's not for points. It's not a league. It's just about racing with other people. It's not about winning. It's with gentleman rules, having really cool races. And that is what we started with and what we're still doing. And there's this guy that says on Christmas evening, that says, guys, I can't swear here. It's so effing cool that you guys are here because I have nobody else to go to. There's no Christmas dinner. There's no wife. There's no kids. There's nobody. It's just me sitting here. I don't have friends, but I'm with you guys and I'm having a great time. So what for me is just a race with a few buddies, for him, it's a total different experience. It is a night out. It is basically being in a pub with mates, but instead of drinking beer, we're racing video games, right? And it's really cool. And it's at those moments that you need to realize that what we're doing, and everybody in the community, is not me, right? It's the people, it's the users that generate content. Where on the other hand, the receiving end, there's one guy or girl or kid that sits and thinks, wow, cool. This was made for me, right? I'm enjoying this. This makes me happy. And if they speak up, email, tweet, private message, and share. And I think that's also one of the things that we want to do with OverTake, is say thank you, right? And by showcasing people being a hero of the month, it's a massive reward, right? If somebody says thank you, just that's more than enough. And I think in your case, running this project for 23 years, there have been many people, and it doesn't matter if there are 3 million or 800 listeners, there are people that are enjoying it. And if they speak up, that's what you do it for.
Well, I mean, the difference here, of course, is you're doing it for a living. I'm doing it for a hobby. I guess that's the main difference here.
But that's the logical end result of your work, right? It was never RD was never started to become a job. It became a job because it grew so fast, and obviously at some point, if you're spending 16 hours a day on your website, literally, right, 16 hours a day, you can't have a job next to it. It's impossible. So
okay, I don't spend.
Yeah. When it was an early business, it was pure poverty, I can tell you, because you can't have a job and doing this at the same time. It didn't work. But yeah, that was a crossroad where you have to make a decision. Sometimes it's a good decision, and sometimes it isn't. But yeah, I'm glad that we stuck around and that we did this. And like we said in the press release, and I stand by it, it was 17 years, but we're ready for 17 more. Because sim racing will not go away, and it's
now
it's
is it
just
17
starting.
or 16? Because we keep saying 16 and now you say 17.
Well,
Now
in
you make
April-
me insecure.
In April, it's 17 years.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
I'm still good for 1 month. So I
Yeah.
have to release this quick. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Better get it done.
Yeah, the best
Yeah,
way you
well,
release it.
I mean, it's always depending on what your motives is. I mean, we speak a lot about esports, right, and being a niche
Yeah.
and stuff. And I had this exactly argument with somebody who created an esports scene in Nigeria, and he has much bigger plans for esports in general in the country himself. Like, hey, I want to create an employment because a lot of people here are doing illegal scam stuff with emailing and fraud and stuff. And I want to give people an honest job perspective by making this esports thing a big business and industry in the country of Nigeria to give them well-paid, honest employment.
Yeah.
And this is something where we Europeans, we think like, okay, well, you know, we don't have these ambitions because we don't have to, but that is also because of the conditions in our countries. We don't have to worry about finding a new job, you know. So I think it always depends on where you're coming from.
Yeah. I think everything starts with enjoying it. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, whether that's your real life job, your relationship, or the niche of games you're in, or starting a project, you need to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, you can't
True.
do it for a longer period
True.
of time.
True.
And unfortunately, us sim racers, we have been affected with a disease, and this disease is incurable. And that's really the thing. It sits in your system, and you can go away for a few years, and it'll come back. It sometimes its ugly head pops up again, and you're back. Right? You get sucked in and back into the niche.
We certainly have to make a follow-up in a year or two and see how
Sure.
things developed, you
Yeah,
know, from
nice.
there on. And I'm very happy that I see we have a lot of common interests, you know. I see a lot of things from the retro perspective because retro is my thing.
Yeah.
And this is also why I'm so looking forward to the new test drive, because for me, next to Need for Speed, like for René, it was also Test Drive that started it for me. And I think Test Drive is also a series that more younger people don't really recall as series. Like everybody is like Need for Speed, Need for Speed, Need for Speed. So it will be good to see another installment of the Test Drive series again.
If it's half as good as the first Test Drive Unlimited, I would be really, really happy. That was
very
I just
good.
want a nice map. I want the dealerships to return, right, and where you can walk around. There's so many features actually. If you look at Test Drive Unlimited 1 and 2, that are not even standard nowadays, that they did, which are really nice. And I hope that they take the series to explore more things around the actual driving. Yes, the driving needs to be good. I like that they have these missions, you know, where you deliver a car, but I hope they build everything around it, because we have circuit racing, we have A2P racing, right? Do something that gives me really the feeling of this is a special adventure with cars for me. It's like I bring this Ferrari without any damage to the other end of the island, and then I can walk around and maybe really buy this house with the money I made from the street racing, whatever. Just a bigger experience than just driving. Yes, the driving is super important to get that right. The cars are important, but I think Test Drive is the right series to introduce everything around it and make that good.
This is actually the reason why I enjoyed Need for Speed Payback so much, because you had missions like stop the kidnapping or something.
Yeah,
and
that's why I liked the Crew. Didn't like the second because it was the typical Forza Horizon: go there, be the hero,
true.
Fly this thing around and be the coolest guy. The Crew took you through the entire US on a acceptable story, right? I don't want to say, oh, why it's not cool. It's really hard to do a storyline with cars. We know that.
True.
but it was cool. It was enjoyable. I had a nice story plot. I followed it. I saw a lot of the cool levels. I raced through the Grand Canyon. That was nice. I have no clue why Ivory Tower thought on the second it should be Forza Horizon festivals. And unfortunately, they also do that for the third one. So I'm really sad about that.
Yeah. You know which racing game took that to the extreme, and that was Need for Speed: The Run.
Oh,
that
true.
was
yep.
That had its quick time events in between. Yep. Like, what's happening here? Am I actually playing Heavy Rain or something? You know, like, wow, am I in a racing game still, or am I?
I have not been the perfect, but it was a nice intro to it. Yeah. So why not give me that? Why is there no realistic approach on the gumball rally? Why cannot somehow work in the game to get my money, to get the car set up for the next gumball rally in the US, and then I have to balance my finances for the hotels on the way, for buying into the gumball rally, for ensuring that I don't lose my car to the cops. So would be cool to have a mix of, yes, you can race over the streets, but there's enough punishment to sometimes force you to behave, right? Yes. So you have to like strategize, like, do I go for it?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you would have a racing game that has mechanics that no one ever saw.
Why do we spill all these goody ideas here? Why do we do that? Why don't
we'll be done by the OverTake GmbH going forward.
we can invite Joe Barron next time.
Yes.
I mean, he's the prod
manager. Is he fired yet or what?
No. I mean, he is the prod manager now for EA and EA Sports and Code.
Nah, we do our own studio. It's fine. Bram does the coding.
Yeah.
I can tell you, back in the days when NFS Planet was still a big webpage, you might remember that. I actually did Z modeler stuff and livery stuff for Need for Speed Hot Pursuit or High Stakes. So I actually in Germany created the first ever Toyota Supra model based on the Dodge Viper that was in the game. So that was really not great. I took the Viper, I figured out how to use Z-Modeler and try to change the shape a tiny bit of the headlights, of the roof and stuff like that. So it looked a tiny bit less like a Viper and probably even less than the Supra. And then put the livery, like the texture on it from the first Fast and Furious movie, because there obviously was no underground game yet. You couldn't do these things. So you see, I can do the 3D models if Z-Modeler is still a valid choice nowadays.
Yeah, we have a really creative community that can assist. Yeah,
awesome. Just go with it. Awesome. Physics are easy, I heard. People always tell me, just look at this YouTube video, the car does 150 in the corner, just do the same. So must be simple.
If we need a name, what would it be? It's a community-assisted racing sim, right?
Ah, damn, yeah.
Damn, that's
cars
a cool
already. Yeah. But what if we go for my name? So we call it R Factor because it's Renee Factor.
Exactly.
R Factor Cars by Bram.
Or you call it Speed for Need or whatever.
Yeah, Survive to Drive. Now we had that idea already. Since it's Gumball, so we can probably license Gumball. We call it Survive to Drive because it's all about keeping the money and the cars so you can actually attend the next Gumball rally. And it's a career mode. There we go. Done and dusted.
Awesome. Yeah, super fun. Yeah, well, so what are the next plans for you two guys?
Having dinner.
Oh, dinner.
I mean, it's 10 by now, 10:50. So dinner wouldn't be bad.
You haven't had dinner
Go ahead.
Yeah, obviously, I meant for the communities.
No, also dinner. Yeah, a little bit of dinner. That's nice. No, what's in? Platform merger is coming up. So the first thing is we need to technically integrate and merge both systems. That is the focus point for the coming months, and from there it starts. Then we have the chassis, we have the engine, we have cylinders, we have fuel, we have drivers, and then it's time to switch on the motor and firing it up and start racing. I think. Right, yeah. we have all the elements now. So
that's true. I mean, Bram is it's obviously been like. Being the one that handled race department, he's way more into the technical part now of the merger. So I know about it, but I try to not get involved if they use this protocol or do whatever. That's not my strength. So for me, it's the actual, let's call it the product, right? The OverTake itself. Like, what do we want to do with the gained resources? What can we achieve together now that we couldn't achieve before, right? What kind of formats could we do? What could we do, especially with the community now, with RaceDepartment, to maybe create, we thought about a super hardcore, in-depth hardware show, right? With taking things apart and all of that stuff, because that would probably fit into RaceDepartment and into the forum, right? As in like what the people discuss there. So that's more my part. I'm currently looking into what formats should we do? What can we do as community activations? We want to race with our community. Like Bram talked about the Friday night mini races already. We have something similar on OverTake. We did quiz nights with the community about motorsport and gaming. We did a community race nights where we did the minis actually at Nordschleife in the storm on AMS2.
Oh yeah,
that was very interesting. So now that we bring in more people together, what can we do to, on one side, have something for our streams, on the other side, help the community to build what they want, which might not be part of our actual formats, right? Because there's way more than us only doing YouTube. We not do everything just for YouTube. We want to do it for the community. So that's all the different things I'm looking into right now. What team do we need for that? Because obviously with getting RaceDepartment, it's not, we had a bigger team than Bram, but we don't have everything ready like in-house to now take on the forum, right? Because Bram and his community obviously have certain aspects that they would like to see improved going forward. So we're like, all right, and let's sit together and what does that mean? Like, how do we improve that? Who are the right people to take this on? It goes from moderators, right, to community handling and stuff like that. What can we do to support that? And it's not super quick, which is why right from the get-go, we always said we want to do the merger right. Otherwise, we would have started with taking down RaceDepartment on the first day, putting a link on the forum on our page and be done with it, right?
Yeah, go to.
So
go to the other one.
We would never do that, right? So we have an interest on bringing this together in a natural way and ensuring that we all still feel like home, because that's what it should be. If you want to spend a lot of time there, you need to feel like home, and you need to like the people around you. That's on the working side as well as on the community side. So we have a ton of ideas for helping the RaceDepartment side in terms of server structure, infrastructure in general. And then on the OverTake side, okay, what could we do as content-wise for the RaceDepartment one? And then when we come together, how big needs the team to be? And how can we also make the community part of this? So a big step for us going forward, which is something that's very important to Bram and me in general, is how can we include the community in as many aspects as possible? For example, the quiz night, and that's a very minor thing, but on the quiz night, everyone in the chat can play along, and the community has a standing based on their voting for an answer. And if they reach a certain goal, they also get rewards for that. Because I think like, hey, we want to play this, and we don't only want to play it inside our office, basically. We want to play it with everyone. And going forward, we want this in everything. If people are helping in the forum, they should become part of OverTake, right? If people are helping others on setting up the steering wheel or how to do the next step in our tutorial, we want them to become part of our team and have the ability to have more opportunities to do that, right? They can maybe create then a race based on our infrastructure or whatever it might be, right? That's future talk. But what we want to do is making sure that people understand that OverTake is not something just created by us that we put on something, but instead it is a community driven, because we're coming from the community. We're all part of the community, and it should be going forward. It should be community driven as well. And we just want to be like let's say the accelerator, helping from the business side of things or helping from infrastructure side of things to enable our community to do cool things. And then we can cover these cool things on YouTube or do a next tutorial on a series that the community runs maybe, or whatever it might be.
I guess you are making 3 crosses on your calendar once this is all over with, because you are probably so exhausted answering those questions.
No, I enjoy that. I'm the same as Bram.
Cool.
I absolutely love my job. I absolutely love what we're doing. I believe in what we're doing. I know it's hard. Like I said, I work in gaming. I had been there for WC5, which was an awful game when it started because it had no steering wheel support back in the days, which nowadays you can obviously see how my inbox looked like. People telling me what they did with my family and my mom and other things. So I know that the world is harsh, but I also know that we do it for the right reasons, for a community out there that is very passionate that wants to just enjoy the hobby, just like we do. And for that, man, if that means I have to answer these questions the next 20 years, I will do that, as long as I still have time to do the actual work, because otherwise we're not going anywhere. Because we always said, like, we want to prove that we actually stand to our word. And every single time I said something somewhere in a show, whatever, of what we're doing, I made sure that the next month it was there as a step, because that's very important. We're not here to just tell you, oh, it will be great, and then just sit around and Bram and me will have tea the entire day, not doing anything.
You will not. You don't want to have the same situations like No Man's Sky, promising everything and nothing actually is.
They did a lot of work, though. Even the game that came out was already a lot of work.
Yes.
So I never hate on game devs because their life is horrible.
They are still putting in new features and new content nowadays, and that's 6 years after. No, 7 years after.
Never hate on games until you actually went there and did it yourself. And even then, like I said, I was partly involved in that, more in the creative side, and
you were in the game, yes?
Yes, R Factor 2, and then obviously, like I said, the broadcast director mode for Project Cars 2, and then on this arcade game that we talked about, the team thing, I did write the game mechanics and stuff for it to work. So I don't do coding, but I'll do the concept for it, and similar to esports concepts, and it's really hard. And it's the same, even if you have a great idea, maybe others don't like it and they don't get it, or they don't see the world like you do, right? Yeah. So game development, especially nowadays, if you look at what we expect from a game, best example would be Star Citizen. Star Citizen is still far away from being finished, but what they achieved already in terms of technology is absolutely mind-blowing, right? And that's the same with every game dev. No matter if it's an indie dev that does a game on its own, and some of these games are, I could never imagine that someone does that on his own. And then teams, they, no matter how much you hate them, and no matter how much people might hate on Project Cars 3 or whatever it might be, there had been a team very dedicated, and maybe they had been stopped by the company, the CEO that said, like, sorry, we can't spend it. I don't want to go in that direction. You have to do it like this. They were passionate. They loved what they're doing, and they tried to do the best that was possible in that given frame. And sorry to say, the world is not just a place where you can wish for whatever and it happens. It always needs to work in a business case. If it does not work in a business case, you can't have it. And that means they trying their best. And that's why I hate just going straight forward and be like, no, that's pure bullshit. Because there were people behind it that put everything in there 24/7 to get this done. And I think we need to understand that in gaming. It might not be a game for you. Might be a game for someone else.
Well, there are still some unique cases in the game industry, like when Double Dragon for the Commodore 64 was released. The developer team actually made an apology in the manual for creating an awful technical,
flawed game.
A bad game, yeah.
Okay,
yeah. So that was like, wow, you know.
But even that must be horrible for them. Try to imagine that, working on a game for 2 years and then you're not happy when it comes out. That
you actually apologize. Horrible. Yeah, you actually apologize to the customer. Yeah. I mean, that was the days back then. You would put a screenshot on the Amiga version, and the Spectrum or the 64 version looked totally different, and then it was this fine print screenshots, not of the actual gameplay. You know, that
still happens nowadays. Look at Facebook advertisements. Basically that, right?
This is how mafia works. Yeah.
Exactly. Let's be real. If a game like that would exist, it would have been a huge hit, probably.
True. Okay, guys. Well, thanks for taking the time answering my questions and nerding out with me about racing games. That was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure.
Yeah.
I'm happy to see that I'm not totally fallen out of the topic. I was really worried.
Easy on you.
Yeah, that probably was it. Yeah. After the call finished, like, what a jerk. You know?
I have no clue.
What a jerk is George.
This George guy.
Running gag.
Need to block him on LinkedIn right away. Give me a second.
Alrighty. So keep in touch. Talk to you then.
Take care.
Have a good evening.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ciao.
Ciao.